Good evening, council, staff, and members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? I have councillors Fisher and Moore that the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of May 15th come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Please join me in the singing of the national anthem. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all the commend. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you. Councilor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And seeing none, before we do begin, I would like to welcome Director Bedard to our team and just express our excitement to finally have a full table. And we look forward to your combined knowledge and expertise to move Springwater forward together. So welcome. May I have a mover and seconder to call the public meeting to order, please? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood that the public meeting of council held under Section 34 of the Planning Act of the Red Line Revision RR 2024-001 and Zoning Bylaw Amendment 2024-010 and Midhurst Heights Zoning Bylaw Amendment ZB 2024-011 be called to order at 6:35 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Welcome to this public meeting of the Township of Springwater Council held under compliance of Section 34 of this Planning Act to give public an opportunity to express their views in regard to the proposed amendment in the Township of Springwater zoning bylaw as amended. The first part of the meeting is to present the amendment. Following, the public will be given an opportunity to make oral submissions through Zoom application or in person. Any person wishing to make an oral submission is to have notified the township prior to 8:30 a.m. and been added to the commenters list. If a person or public body who files an appeal of the decision of the Township of Springwater in respect to zoning bylaw amendment does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or written submission to the Township of Springwater before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. All comments and questions should be addressed through the chair. Oral submissions will be included in the meeting minutes and form part of the public record, including the name and address of the speaker as information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The minutes of the meeting will be posted to the township's website. RR 2024-001 ZB 2024-010 Midhurst Heights. I will now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of which the meeting has and the dates on which the notice had been given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 25th day of April 2024 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 28 properties in the Township of Springwater within 120 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location visible from Russell Road, Doran Road, and Gill Road. Notice was also posted on the township's website.
Has the planning department received any correspondence in response to the notice of the public meeting?
Correspondence was received from Bell Canada in an email dated May 7, 2024, and from the City of Barrie Risk Management in a memo dated May 15th, 2024. The correspondence can be found attached to this evening's agenda.
Thank you. I will now call upon the agent to outline the purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment and red line revision.
Good evening, members of council. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Perfect. My name's Corey Chisholm. I'm a partner with MHBC Planning in our Barrie office. And I'm here before you this evening on behalf of our clients, Rose Corp, and representatives Andrew Webster and David Luke are here in attendance this evening. I'm also joined this evening by Brittany Robertson from Crozier Engineering, and she's joining virtually in case there are any specific engineering questions related to this application following my presentation. Before I get started, I would just like to thank Township staff. We have been working with Township staff on this application for a while, and we're excited to be in front of council and the public to proceed with the public meeting. Just for context before I get started, the site is Midhurst Heights subdivision in Midhurst. It's been approved for some time, dating back to 2014. Been proceeding through detailed engineering design and getting very close to being able to register the first phases. Since the time of the original approval in 2014, market conditions have changed significantly. So lots that were sized at that time much more expensive these days, and in today's political climate, from the federal and provincial governments down, there's a big push for more housing and more affordable housing types. So really with those things in mind, the proposed red line revisions to the existing approved draft plan are really to implement some smaller unit types into the development to increase the density within the existing approved subdivision and help bring some smaller units to the township, which would come in at a smaller price point than the existing approved lot sizes. Next slide, please. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with the site. Here's the site outlined on an aerial. As the clerk mentioned, there's three boundary roads, Gill Road on the west, Doran Road on the south, and Russell Road on the east. Next slide, please. So just an overview of the proposal, as mentioned, the changes are coming about as a need to redline, to complete a redline revision on the approved subdivision. To facilitate those changes, a zoning bylaw amendment is required as some of those changes do require a change from the existing zoning. The current Midhurst Heights subdivision is approved for 1,440 units. And the proposed changes, as mentioned, would introduce smaller unit sizes, improving affordability. There's some other changes that we're also implementing at the same time. One is to integrate a parcel of land addressed as 2351 Gill Road into the subdivision. At the time in 2014, it wasn't part of the land holdings, so it's a bit of a hole in the subdivision. That's since been acquired by our client. We were before you previously to rezone that piece of land with the intent that it would be incorporated into the subdivision, and I'll go through that in a bit more detail on a future slide. There is also a requirement in the existing conditions of draft plan approval to work with the landowners south of this site to improve the road network in one area of the plan. So these changes implement those proposed changes, and again, we'll have some images to go over those. Overall, the proposed changes would increase the unit count by 111 units. So it'd go from the 1440 it's approved at today up to 1,551 units total. Next slide, please. So this shows the existing approved draft plan. As mentioned, it was originally approved in 2014. We were before previous term of council in 2019 for red line revisions at that time. At that time, the changes were to implement larger road widenings that were required along Doran and Russell Road. So we really kind of had to push the site in by a couple meters on each side. So as of right now, the current approved plan is that 2019 iteration of the plan. Next slide, please. So here's the proposed draft plan. As you can see, it's very similar to the previous slide, and we'll go through some zoom in images to show where these changes are proposed. Next slide, please. So starting with the western side of the site, so here we can see the two entrances to Gill Road. The changes here are to introduce some smaller lot sizes to increase the density from what's currently proposed. It is noted all of these changes are happening on the interior of the existing approved plan, so we aren't changing any of the lot sizes on the exterior that front the perimeter. So from outside of the subdivision, there wouldn't be any sort of discernible change as a result of the proposal. Generally, lots of 15.2 meters up to 18 meters are being revised down to 10.7 and 12.2 meter sizes. So again, still single detached dwellings just coming down in lot frontage. In this portion of the plan, it represents an increase of about 42 lots. I will point out as well, actually right where it says Gill, just to the east of that, where the holdout parcel was, that was acquired since the original approval. So again, that's being integrated into the draft plan, which will provide a nice consistent streetscape along Gill Road. Previously, without that property, there would have been a bit of a gap in the built form along there. Next slide, please. So the next set of changes are around the Parquet block, block 1214. Again, this is in the southwestern, kind of west side of the plan. And it's to implement an increase of density around the park. This area was targeted as it'll help animate the park and provide more eyes on the street in this location. Currently, there are townhouses located around the park. And we are proposing to increase those with some smaller frontage townhouse units. So generally in this area, is proposed 10.7 meter singles. And towns currently approved at widths of 7.6 up to 12.2 meters are being revised to towns of 6 meters. And in this location, it represents an increase of approximately 19 lots. Next slide, please. So in this portion of the plan, we are at the east end, and there's a minor change in the lot fabric proposed. So currently in this area, there's generally bungalow towns, and we're looking to change those to single detached dwellings. So generally the towns of 12.2 meters in width are being revised to single detached dwellings ranging from 10.7 to 12.2 meters. And in this area of the plan, it represents an increase of 3 lots. Next slide, please. So this is the first of 2 changes around the existing approved park blocks. In reviewing the plan, the original approved plan did have quite a surplus in parkland over and above what's required under the Planning Act. So with that in mind, we've looked at areas where we could take some of the park and implement some additional lots, still providing more than the minimum parkland dedication required under the Planning Act. So in this the largest park within the plan, we're proposing 5 single detached lots on that east end. Again, that portion of the park block was really narrow and not super functional to the overall design of the park. Next slide, please. So moving down, this is the other large park block, block 1213. This is in the southeast portion of the overall plan. And again, we're looking for where we could implement some additional lots while maintaining more than the minimum parkland requirement. So there's proposal to add 2 blocks of 4 townhouses each in this location for a total of increase of 8 units. Next slide, please. So again, another minor change that's being picked up through these applications. As part of the original approval, there was a number of well blocks that were set aside. There was 1 well block located in this location. And as detailed engineering has advanced, it's turned out that well block's not required to provide water to the subdivision. The other 2 wells are sufficient. So with that in mind, through these changes, we're converting that well block into an additional lot. So it adds an additional townhouse unit to one of the existing blocks. Next slide, please. So this is zooming in again back to the west side of the plan, but this is the holdout parcel, the 2351 Gill Road, outlined in green. So you can see where that falls within the lot fabric. The existing approved draft plan, while it didn't include those lands, actually had ghosted in lot lines on how, in the fullness of time, if that's acquired, how it could be integrated into the subdivision. So these changes are implementing that, and we had previously been here to rezone piece of land when it was first acquired. Next slide, please. So this is, I mentioned previously, some changes that are required currently under the draft plan conditions to work with the adjacent landowner to try to improve the road network in fabric in this portion of the plan. We refer to it as the chimney, and we'll see it better in the next slide, but along the east side, it's just a virtue of the parcel fabric at the time these approvals were done, but there's a long, narrow strip of land running along up the east side of the plan. At the time of the original approvals, that landowner wasn't moving forward with specific development applications. So the Midhurst Heights site had to work itself around that piece of land, which led to a bit of an inefficient street pattern in that section, which included a cul-de-sac dead ending at that road. Those lands have been acquired by developers, and our client's been working collaboratively with them to come up with improvements that benefit both sides in that section of the plan. So this is the implementation of that improved road network, and we can see two roads, Winterberry and Herbert, connecting to the road that we refer to as the chimney, and avoiding any single loaded roads. So we're providing a more efficient road pattern. And overall, this represents an increase in 6 lots. Next slide, please. So just before I get into the overall changes, you can see here zoomed out more clearly what I referred to there as the chimney, but it's that strip of land right in the middle going up north. So again, this shows zoomed out all of the changes that are proposed. It's hard to tell at this scale with the red lines, but as you can see, the changes, other than that small area, we're keeping the approved existing road pattern and really just playing with the existing widths of lots in different areas of the plan. And overall, it represents an increase in 111 lots. Next slide, please. So this is an excerpt of the current approved zoning bylaw. It's difficult to see the different types of hatching there. And overall, the residential portions of the site are either in an urban residential 1 or urban residential 2 zone. These zones are used throughout the Midhurst secondary plan area, with the UR1 zone being for lower density, larger lots, and the UR2 zone being for smaller size single detached lots and getting into other types like semis and townhouses. So there are several sections of the current approved plan that we're proposing to change from the UR1 to the UR2 zone to align with the proposed changes to the draft plan. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, we are proposing, and we'll see in, I think, in the next image, where the UR1 is proposed to change to the UR2 zone. Addition to that, those 2 sections of park where we're looking to add a few lots, they're currently zoned open space or OS. And similarly, through this process, we'd be changing the zoning on those 2 portions to the UR2 zone. Next slide, please. So here we can see the schedule to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And in the hatching on the left with the cross stripe, that's where the UR1 is changing to the UR2 zone. And then the cross hatch, which is in the 2 park blocks, is where the open space is proposed to change to the UR2 zone. Next slide, please. And I'd mentioned this at the top, but as I'm sure everyone is aware, certainly the provincial government's been undertaking a big push to try to get more houses to come online sooner. Outlined here is 3 recent bills. There's some other bills that predate these 3. And obviously Bill 185 and 162 are both fresh of mind since they're both this year. But we believe the proposed revisions through the red line and the zoning bylaw amendment help implement that direction from the province. Next slide, please. So along with the applications, we did submit a planning justification report as well as civil engineering report. In our planning report, we go through all the various layers of planning policy, the provincial policy statement and provincial growth plan down through the county's official plan, the Township of Springwater's official plan, and then zooming in on the Midhurst secondary plan. And through that is our conclusion that the proposed changes are consistent with and conform to all of those policy documents. Next slide, please. So overall, in conclusion, as the proposed changes do align with policy direction and help implement the objectives of the federal and provincial governments, among others, to deliver more housing, we believe the proposed applications represent good planning. And I'm happy to answer any questions members of the public or council may have. And as mentioned, we do also have our civil engineer with us as well. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chisholm. I will now call upon the moderator to provide the number of people who've registered to make oral submissions or ask questions this evening.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There have been no members of the public who have registered to make an oral submission.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public this evening that would like to ask any questions? Not seeing any, I will now turn to council for comments or questions on the application. Councillor Fisher?
Just wanted to say when I heard initially about a potential red line revision, I was a bit apprehensive. But I know that the proponent and staff have worked very hard on it. I think a few things that stand out to me. One, there is political will to have more homes built, and I think we have something well underway. But there have been housing affordability issues, and I think some real market changes for developers. So I am cognizant of the situation they're in, but I also think that both the proponent and staff have worked very hard on this. One, the preservation of parkland. It was something I was very worried about, and I think they've done a good job on it. We haven't seen very much erosion of that at all. Also, too, they are single detached homes, and there's no visible difference from Gill Road, which I know a lot of people brought to me in the community. So I think that there's been a real effort on on both our staff working with the proponent. So to a point, frankly, where I'm happy with what I see. So.
Any other comments or questions from members of council? Not seeing any. Thank you to all who have participated in the public meeting with respect to the proposed red line revision and zoning bylaw amendment and for showing interest in this matter. We will now move on to ZB 2024-011. And I will call upon the clerk to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 25th day of April 2024 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 6 properties in the township of Springwater within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location visible from Floss Road 10 West. Notice was also posted on the township's website.
Has the planning department received any correspondence in response to the notice of the public meeting?
Correspondence was received from the Infrastructure and Operations Department for the Township of Springwater in an email dated April 25th, 2024, from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority in an email dated April 29, 2024, from the Severn Sound Environmental Association in an email dated May 1st, 2024, and from the City of Barrie Risk Management in a memo dated May 15th, 2024. The correspondence can be found attached to this evening's agenda.
Thank you. I will now call upon our planner to outline the purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment.
Oh, can you guys see me?
We can hear you, but we cannot see you. Oh, we can see you now.
There we go. Hi,
to
sorry
see
about that. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and good evening, members of council and the public. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is to fulfill conditions 5 and 6 for consent application B0724 to rezone the lands municipally known as 1584 Floss Road 10 West from an agricultural zone to the agricultural exception zone and agricultural consolidation exception zone. Myself and Mr. Tubman are in attendance, should you guys have any questions.
Thank you for that. I will now call upon the moderator to provide the number of people who have registered to ask questions or comments regarding this application.
Thank you. There have been no members of the public who have registered to make oral submission.
And I will now turn to our audience to see if there's any members of the public who would wish to ask questions or express concerns. And not seeing any, are there any members of council that have any questions or concerns with the application before us? Mr. Tugman, you're getting off easy here tonight.
Thanks for a change.
Well, I am now just going to thank everyone for being here. So our meeting has concluded unless there's anything that you would like to add for us. Seeing as you did come and you are sitting in front of us, if there's anything.
Get the approval for the rezoning changes and it's been a long time getting to this point. So I figured I'd be here and finish it out. So I'd appreciate it if it's okay to do the changes.
There doesn't seem to be any questions or concerns, but we will be passing this later this evening. But thank you very much for being in attendance, and there doesn't seem to be any opposition to what has been proposed. So thank you
Okay.
very much. And I would like to thank all who have participated in the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and for showing interest in the matter. May I have a mover and seconder to adjourn the public meeting, please? I have Councillor Alexander and Councillor Garwood that the public meeting of council held under section 34 of the Planning Act for RR 2024-001 and ZB 2024-010 Midhurst Heights and ZB 2024-011 Tubman does now adjourn at 6:59 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. May I have a mover and seconder for the direction following the public meeting? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Alexander. The council, having had public meeting in accordance with section 34 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended for red line revision RR 2024-001 and zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2024-010 Midhurst Heights, having noted correspondence and input received, direct that the application be referred back to staff. Are there any further questions or discussion on this motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. And a mover and seconder for the second. Councillor Fisher and Moore, that report from the planner regarding ZB 2024-011 Tubman dated May 15th, 2024 be received and that bylaw 5387 be presented to council for consideration and approval at the May 15th, 2024 meeting, subject to comments received during the public meeting. Are there any further questions or comments? All those in favor? And that has carried. We will now be moving on to our question period, and Clerk Ainsworth, are there any submissions this evening?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There have been no submissions received for this evening's meeting.
I will now turn to members of the public for any questions or comments on our agenda this evening. Not seeing any. We will now move on to our minutes. May I have a mover and seconder for approval of the council minutes, please? I have Councillors Thompson and Moore that the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. 1, the minutes of a special meeting of council, May 1, 2024 at 4:30 p.m. 2, the minutes of the regular meeting of council of May 1, 2024. 3, the minutes of the special meeting of council of May 1, 2024 at 8 p.m. 4, minutes of the special meeting of council, closed session, May 1, 2024. And 5, the minutes of the special meeting of council, May 8th, 2024. Council, are there any questions on any of these minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. Moving on now to our boards and committees. We have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of boards and committees. I have Councillor Fisher and Councillor Garwood that the minutes of the boards, committees, and organizations listened to herein be received for information. We have our minutes of our Agricultural Advisory Committee of March 5th, 2024, 2, the draft minutes of the NVCA Directors Meeting of April 26th, 2024, and 3, the draft minutes of the NVCA, Source Protection Authority Meeting of April 26th, 2024. Council, are there any questions or comments on any of these? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. And we will now move on to item 9.1. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the memo from the Agricultural Advisory Committee? I'll have that moved by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Moore. That the memo regarding the request for consideration for the Agricultural Advisory Committee regarding boundary expansions, municipal border boundary adjustments, as well as cross-border servicing agreements impacting agricultural lands be received for information. I will now turn to Councillor Fisher and then open it up to the floor. Councillor Fisher?
Just think it's very important that we keep in consideration the agricultural community within Springwater. It's certainly a large economic driver, and these landowners and business operators are very important. During our last meeting of the board, we decided to bring this forward to council, and I'd like to have council's endorsement in support of this resolution.
Councillor Moore, seconded. Councillor, are there any other questions or comments on this? I'd just like to turn to either CEO Schmidt or Director Heron. Is there an opportunity then that we can have our agricultural committee added to our commenting list, much like we get comment from NBCA or SSE or anybody that's involved, to ensure that they're aware of applications as they come forward? Director Heron?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. It would not be a hardship on staff to circulate the committee on any planning applications that come in. There may be applications that are applicable to other departments, so we'll have to have that discussion. I know that they're asking about any changes to agricultural lands due to expropriation discussions or other reasons. So I think we'll have to look at that to fully explore how we respond to the agricultural committee. However, I think it's doable. That would be the answer.
Thank you for that. Councillor Fisher?
I think what the committee is looking for is specifically as it pertains to agricultural land and land that's used in production of food, that they would be apprised to it. Just to categorize it, if it's a small piece of land in a settlement area, it's certainly not on their radar. But large pieces of agricultural land, that's certainly something they'd want to be apprised to and have their input. So
I'll turn to other members of council for comment on this. And there was, so I did have this moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Moore, and then there was an amendment put forward. I'll turn to Clerk Ainsworth for that, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The motion listed on the agendas to simply receive the correspondence from the Agricultural Advisory Committee. What Councillor Fisher, I believe, is tabling is to add, and that council hereby supports the resolution passed by the Agricultural Advisory Committee, which would then action the requests that they have come forward with.
Thank you. And a seconder for the amendment, please. Councillor Garwood? Perfect. And if there's no further comments or questions, so this is on the amendment just to action the request of the committee. Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. And unless there's anything further on this, we will return back to our main motion as amended. So we are receiving this and then actioning. And not seeing any from council. All those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to item 10.1, MZO request. May I have a mover and seconder regarding the options report for MZO 2024-001. I have moved by Deputy Cabral, seconded by Councillor Fisher, that the report from the planner MZO 2024-001 3169, 3193, 3207 Berry Hill Road dated May 15th be received. And option 1, that Council of the Township of Springwater endorse the CWH Inc.'s proposed request to locate the community subdivision development on lands known as 3169, 3193, and 3207 Berry Hill Road through a provincial land use approval process. Or option 2, that Council of the Township of Springwater does not endorse the CWH Inc.'s proposed request to locate the subdivision lands lands known as 3169, 3193, 3207 Berry Hill Road. And at this time, I will open this up to council for comments or questions. And Deputy Cabral.
Wrong button. There we go. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I do recall the presentation being given, and I do recall too that there was a fair number of points made during that presentation. And if I recall correctly, there was support from council to move it forward a little bit. So I would be leaning towards option number one. I think the development actually meets a lot of what the provincial government is looking to do. And it did take in kind of what I would consider to be an orphan piece of land. And I think it rounds out the entire subdivision in that area and certainly provides additional homes, which seems to me that the provincial government is really pressing for. I heard today that the federal's government's numbers are down by 1% this month on what their targets were. So maybe they were a little bit ambitious, but I think Springwater is trying to do its part to certainly move things forward. So I'm for option number one.
Thank you for that, Deputy Cabral. I do agree, and we can leave this open on the floor, or if there's someone that would like to second option one, I have Councillor Moore. And just as a reminder to council and members of the public that this, in our procedural bylaw, does require 2/3 vote in order for this to pass. So it would require 5 out of 7. But it's open on the floor if there's any comments or questions. Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has passed unanimously. That was the amendment. Sorry, that was to move option number one. I do apologize, council. We do need to go back to the main motion. And again, all those in favor, and again, unanimously. Council, we are now moving on to our action reports. And at this time, I will ask council for a mover and seconder. I will read through the action reports. I will ask if there are any to be pulled. If we pull an item, it's to have the item, the recommendation redirected. If there's any comments or questions on any of the items listed here, and we can do that as part of the process. So I just a mover and seconder to get these on the floor, please. I have Councillors Garwood and Deputy Cabral that action items 11.2 through 11.11 be received and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as presented. We have 11.2, the award of the RFP 2024-05 PW, the mechanical screen system at the Elmvale wastewater treatment plant. 11.3, award of the RFP 2024-31 PW, the cloth media filtration system of the Elmvale wastewater treatment plant. 11.4, the award of the RFP 2024-32 PW, the supply of the ultraviolet disinfection system of the Elmvale wastewater treatment plant upgrades. We have 11.5, Scarlet Line boundary road improvements. 11.6, the zoning bylaw amendment for ZB 2023-016 30 Spence Avenue. 11.7, a lift hold application of the Estates of Ant Mill subdivision phase 1. 11.8, part lot control exemption for the Huron Creek Elmvale Village, phase 1C. SU 2021-003, stage 2 subdivision agreement request to council for authorization of the Thompson lands. 11.10, Heritage Park refurbishment project. 11.11, fees and charges recommended fee structure phased in. And I did earlier say through to 11.11, but we do have 11.12, our fire station status update, and 11.13, request for information, potential future options for areas for growth and economic viability within the township of Springwater. So again, it's 11.2 through 11.13. And council, at this time, are there any that we wish to pull to discuss separately? Deputy Cabral?
11.13, and I'd like to comment on 11.11.
Thank you for that. Councillor Moore.
I'd like 11.12, please.
And pulled or comment? Thank you. Are there any, Councillor Garwood?
I would like to just make comment on 11.10.
Councillor, is there anything further to be pulled or make comment? And at this point in numerical order, we'll move to 11.10 Heritage Park sign refurbishment project for comment, and we'll move then to the fees and charges. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. First off, I just wanted to thank Manager Dean and staff for bringing this report forward. I know this is something that I championed last year. We definitely know from the staff report that a full refurbishment of the sign is definitely necessary. So again, I'm excited to see us move forward with celebrating the Heritage Park's 25th anniversary in 2025 and commemorating those that have given so much to the community through that park. So again, I just wanted to thank staff and I'm excited to see the project move forward.
Thank you for those comments. We'll now move on to 1111 fees and charges. Deputy Cabral.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I wanted to comment on this one because when this originally came up, we had a situation where the Parks and Recreation fee structure was what kind of opened up the door to the fees and charges being reviewed. So what I'm looking at here is fees and charges recommended fee phase-in, excluding building and recreation parks and facilities. So these fees would take effect now. So what I would like to know through you, Mayor Coughlin, to staff is when council can anticipate the fees and charges for building, recreation parks and facilities to be presented to council, because I'm very anxious to make sure that it happens before the next budgetary go round. Because in effect, what's happened is, folks have enjoyed the benefit of reduced rates at the old rate for a better part of 18 months or so, 16 months or so. So that's what I wanted to know. It would make it a lot easier for me to support this right now rather than try and put it on hold until everything can be brought forward together. So that's what I'm looking for, just some assurance from staff that the other piece, the Parks and Rec and facilities, is going to be before council prior to budget so that we can incorporate it into budget going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So Deputy Mayor Cabral, the building services piece, just to clarify, that has been done, that was done, just so members of council are aware. So as it relates to the parks and recreation piece, Director Culver and I've had recent discussions, and we're of the same mindset, where essentially we'll be in front of council before the 2025 budget deliberations to have something for council's consideration. So hence this fall, we'll have something before you.
Not seeing anything further, council. We have pulled item 11.12 and 11.13. So at this time, we will be approving 11.2 through 11.11. If there's nothing further on those, all those in favor, and that has carried. We will now move on to 11.12. And that was pulled, Councillor Moore. So I'm going to ask that Councillor, to move that, and we'll just look for a seconder to get it on the table. And Councillor Fisher, that the report from the Chief Administrative Officer for the new fire station update dated May 15th, 2024 be received, and the council approve an additional 1.75, to the total budget to cover the required work and provide the contingency provision to ensure the completed project. And the council approved the additional funding for the project 2014-07 to be drawn from development charges for the balance from debt. And at this time, I will turn to Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to CEO Schmidt. The last meeting we had about the fire hall project and the costs associated was a closed session meeting. So just wondering what I can talk about now is related to the cost, because I see we're in a similar position that we were somewhat with our first contractor. So do we need to have another closed session meeting so we can talk about this openly? Okay.
I'll turn to CEO Schmidt for an overview, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Moore. So Councillor Moore, you're right. The original conversation back in the fall, we did have a closed session, but subsequent to that, there was a report that was in on a public agenda in early October, which awarded the contract to Pega Construction. So I think we can have likely an open dialogue with regards to that. Again, subject to what exact topic you want to discuss as it relates to that. But I think for the most part, the report is open and happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Counselor Moore?
In the spirit of transparency, so if you could walk us through then how we arrived at yet again an over budget on the fire hall, where we're looking for $1.7 million, which put us right back to where we were. Thank you.
Director Schmidt? Sorry, CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councilor Moore. So Councilor Moore and members of council. So you may recall, like I said, back in October, we came to council with a bit of a change, if you will, with respect to the fire station. We had entertained a contract with another provider, and we had some challenges or difficulties with that provider. And at that time, conversation happened, direction was provided to move forward with this new vendor, which is PEGA. In doing so, there was an additional cost of essentially $1.6 million in order to entertain their best and final offer. So since that time, since October, or essentially early November, we've been working with PEGA Construction and their team to move this project forward. Essentially, a part of the project is to move from 30% design to 100% design, which is where we're at. And essentially, once that's in place, begin construction. And so we are at a point where essentially at 85–90% design. And when we were looking through the project, unfortunately, it came to our attention that there's additional required works that weren't originally in scope of the original project. So not when we went out with the RFP, these items were not provided for in the original scope of the project. In addition to that, we've also been advised that there's been no contingency, which is typically provided for in these types of projects. So as noted in the report this evening, some of the required works that weren't included in the original scope, there's 4 key things, the supply and installation of a culvert in front of the property, the construction of the apparatus bay, so essentially the apron between the facility and Snow Valley Road, the supply of granular material, as well as there's a change in the hydro connection that Hydro One is essentially advising we need to undertake. So those costs, the staff have estimated to be roughly just under $1.1 million. In addition to that, as I mentioned, we did uncover that there was no contingency. Staff is suggesting that we have a contingency of approximately $680,000, which represents just under 7% added to this budget. In addition to that, we are aware that the contractor has recommended a couple of extra items, and they're laid out in the report this evening. Those equate to approximately $435,000. So in total, with the required works, so the works that were excluded, if you will, in scope, as well as these additional works or extra works, it's about $1.5 million. That being said, those extra works, again, are we haven't agreed to those as of yet, but they are recommending that we proceed with those extra works. So essentially, in total, because it's around $1.5 million, staff is seeking a $1.75 million increase to this project to ensure that we can move forward and not have to be in the same position in the future, coming back to council seeking additional funds. So then I guess I'll just finish up indicating that the $1.75 million that's being requested is proposed to be funded from mostly development charges. So the project is about 86–87% funded from development charges, with the balance coming from debt. And maybe I'll pause there and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilor Fisher?
Just a few comments. The 4 items that you just listed, the culvert, the apron, are we saying that's $1.5 million in those 4 items that were mentioned?
CEO Schmidt?
Through Mayor Coughlin to Councilor Fisher. Councilor Fisher, approximately just under $1.1 million for those items.
Follow on, Councilor Fisher?
Just two comments. It just seems expensive, you know, now that I hear the 4 items. For a culvert, an apron, extra fill to go in there. 1.1 seems like a lot. I'm certainly not an expert on it, but it seems like a lot. Anyway, the other comment I was going to make, and this is sort of more actually to do with the hub that we're building. I think that this should serve as a bit of a lesson for us as we're getting into larger projects to maybe proceed with caution or maybe have some type of management in place. You know, the fire hall is a relatively small project as compared to the hub. And I certainly, as much as I do endorse and I do want the hub to come, I think this does serve as a bit of a warning. You know, and I'm not, you know, I'm not saying this is staff's fault in any way. As a matter of fact, I mean, I know it's the nature of building right now. But I do think it serves as a warning, a bit of a wake up call as we're moving taxpayers into a very costly project, right? So this to me, it rings alarm bells, not just with the fire hall, right, which we're going ahead with, but also a project that's sort of we're warming up into as well. So I don't know what that looks like in terms of management, but I think we really need to sit back and say, okay, this has been a tester maybe in a large project. And what does management look like this? So we're not having, I'll say it, I'm looking at $1.75 million. What happens when it's 25 and $34 million, right? To finish a project that I'd love to see in our community. But I think there's wanting something and having it financially viable. They have to marry each other. So.
Thank you. Just 2 parts on that. I know that we didn't foresee this coming back to council, but for members of the public and ourselves, what is the timeline on this now? So after tonight, if this is supported by council, are we shovels ready? Let's get going, or what does the timeline look like on this?
Thank you, Mayor Coggan, and I did miss that piece, so thank you for the reminder. Leading up to today, the construction company or PEGA actually wanted to start moving forward with a foundation permit, which we said hold off until this evening and see what council's decision was. So essentially, they have applied for a building permit application. They're in the process of, we could be tomorrow giving them a permit for a foundation. That said, we are also looking to reschedule the groundbreaking. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks here, we'll come out with a date for council to consider, assuming you're in support of tonight's request. And then I would just expect to see some construction happening in the month of June onwards.
Thank you for that. Councillor Fisher?
So through you to I guess CIO Schmidt, not to belabor the point, but can we hear it's mainly comprised of 4 major asks that they're asking for, and then just to go at $435,000 in sort of incidentals. Is there any way, and I certainly don't want to delay the project, but is there any way to see that itemized? Again, I go back to a culvert. I don't know if it's made, like, is it a golden culvert? I don't know. The amount of fill that has to be in there, certainly that would have been accounted for, I would think. You know, I wonder if there any way for council to see something itemized so we could wrap our head around the cost. You know, if it was a few $100,000, okay, but we're looking at $1.5 million spread across 4 different items. I have a hard time wrapping my head around it.
I'll turn to CEO Schmidt and maybe defer then to Manager Mabira.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. At this time, maybe I can turn things over to our senior project engineer Mabira to maybe explain some of those components.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Through you, I would like to give more details on the items as part of the additional cost. One major item which has not been mentioned is that the size of the building was increased. When you are going through the detailed design, the architect and the team, they moved stuff around. So at the end of the day, the building's 34 square meters larger than what was in the original scope. So that constitutes a major component of the increase. Another one, the major one is the driveway from Snow Valley Road to the apparatus bay. It wasn't part of the scope. That is also one of the major items. Then the supply of all the gravel material for the whole project was excluded from the scope. The whole idea was that the township would supply it separately, but now we do realize that we can't do that. So that also constitutes the other major additional scope. And then the additional cost for hydro connection. The base scope, in the base scope, the transformer was supposed to be mounted on a pole. After initial discussions with hydro, it was found that this is not possible, that we need a pad for the transformer. These all changes also increase the cost of the overall. Those are the major costs. The apron is just a minor cost. It's not one of the major costs, just because it is listed, but most of these are under these ones.
I have Councillor Fisher and then Deputy Cabral, Councillor Alexander.
So just to recap, and thank you, because that actually certainly don't like the cost being that high, but it certainly makes a little bit more sense. So just to recap, the size of the building has grown by 34 meters. We originally were going to supply the aggregate and the gravel, but now that's changed, so that's fairly significant. And it's essentially a new driveway, right? Larger driveway and the hydro matter. Okay, just to recap so the public can hear it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I guess two questions. Number one, the piece about the hydro, I guess my question would be is, there must have been calculations made to cover the hydro costs going to the building originally. And since we were talking about a pole, I would suspect that the hydro would have been going into the building through overhead wires. And now hydro is telling us that we have to put the transformer on the ground, which indicates that now the service is going underground, which means a substantial increase in the cost of cabling going into that building. Is there a difference between the two? Like, is it the difference that we're talking about that's the increase, or did we not kind of figure that into the price in the first place? I guess that would be the one question I wouldn't mind seeing getting answered. And the second piece would be, is our gravel and fill not suitable for the job, and is that why we are having to incur additional costs for it? Because I'd rather see us reduce the costs and use materials that are already available to us, and quite possibly even our trucks delivering it, which would really reduce our costs, I think, as opposed to having to contract it out. So that would be the question: is it because ours is not suitable to the purpose? So those are the two questions. I'd appreciate if staff could answer. I guess I'll send it to CAO Schmidt.
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Collins, through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So you're right. Originally, the gravel that we had anticipated using from our pit is not suitable for this project, and that in itself is about $380,000 impact to the project. In addition to that, to Senior Project Engineer Mabira's comments, the hydro connection, the additional cost is around $280,000 that we had originally contemplated, if you will. And then, of course, the apparatus driveway was around, it's estimated around $317,000. So those three items right there account for the majority of the 1.1 million.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I have more just to comment. I do have concerns in general about, I think, our RFP process, and the fact that the first one, we awarded an RFP that couldn't actually do the job without a significant amount of extra funding. So we pulled back we awarded a second one that also wasn't accurate. So now we've substantially 1.7 million is a big number in terms of the overall budget of this project. We're not talking like a 1% increase. We're talking a big increase. So I have concerns about that. And I have concerns about the additional scope. It's always a concern in a project. Scope creep is what gets your numbers higher and higher. And to have this amount of scope creep without even shovels in the ground concerns me.
Counselor Fisher?
Just not to repeat myself, but I share the same concerns, and I think we're well underway with this project, and I think that staff have explained, I may not like it, we may not like it, but staff have offered some explanation, and certainly the aggregate is a huge piece of it, nearly $400,000, and I'm building myself, I can relate, but but I will reiterate, I think this serves as a warning for us, and I'd really like, whether it's in council or individually with staff, I think we need, as a group of professionals that I see up there, and I mean that sincerely, I think we need to really think as we embark on the next project, how are we going to manage this, right? So to me, I see this as a problem, not a problem on any individual necessarily, but it's a problem that just can't be repeated on a larger scale, and I think, again, it serves as a warning, and I'd hate in next council 2 years from now, whenever that the numbers are much bigger and it's taking from DCs and going on the tax bill. So that's I know I've said it a few times, but it's pretty serious.
I would agree. I think that it's been, 10 years now that I've been sitting here, and I think I was under 3 million the first time it was brought to us, and then it was about 5, it was 2.2 and then 5.7 and then 7.9, and it just keeps going up and up and up and up. And I think Deputy Cabral and I are seeing this at the county table too. Every capital job that's been put out there, the overtures are, I think we approved a $30 million increase at the county level. So this is while it's disheartening, while it's concerning, we need to get those shovels. We need to get this built because it's not going to get cheaper tomorrow. So I do agree that thank you to staff for bringing this forward, and thank you for itemizing it for us because it's a massive number to swallow. But let's get those shovels in the ground. So council, if there's anything further on this, not seeing anything, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you. We will now move on to item 1113. I have this pulled by Deputy Cabral and a seconder for this, please. Councillor Moore, that the report from the Director of Planning and Development entitled Request for Information, Potential Future Options and Areas for Growth and Economic Viability within the Township dated May 15th be received, and that council directs staff to issue a request for proposal for the purpose of determining opportunities for settlement area expansions and report back. I will now turn to Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The reason I wanted this pulled is I wanted to thank staff for the work that they put into it. And I certainly understand that staff's hands are tied to a certain point in what they can recommend and what they can't. They have to abide by the Planning Act, our own provincial planning. They have to abide by our own internal planning procedures and processes. And it's difficult for them, as much as they may have wanted to be able to identify certain things in certain places that just didn't fit in with those parameters. I think what that does is it leaves it up to council at some point in time to look at what other options are available to us going forward. So first was to thank them for the job. There's a lot of good information in there, in particular the cross-border servicing piece. And identifying those particular partnerships between municipalities, I thought was a bit of an eye-opener. And it's also because I think our staff are respectful of responsible planning, and that's also you can recognize that in the report as well. So what I would like to do is ask that we move this report and approve it, but I'd also like to have a bit of redirection with it. And basically what I'd like to propose is that staff report requests for information, potential future options and areas for growth and economic viability with the Township of Springwater be received, and that staff recommendation contained within seeking authorization from council to issue the RFP to secure professional services as described within the report be granted, and that a special meeting of council be convened to further discuss and review, report, consider, and formulate strategies and responses with legal counsel with expertise in the area of municipal affairs and municipal government present at that meeting. And I just wanted to also point out that during a couple of sessions, there have been times when staff have indicated that there were certain things that could not be disclosed due to confidentiality. And I think having another meeting to address not only this report, but other options and other strategies that council might be able to come up with on our own, working with staff and allowing them to fully disclose to us, I think would be beneficial. So that's what I'd like to see happen. And I just wanted to ask one more question of staff, if I may. And the question for staff, and I guess I'll direct this through the mayor to CO Schmidt, is the request in there for the RFP. I just wanted to know if you might be able to elaborate on that piece a little bit more, and if there are the benefits to township as a whole, not specific to it being included in the report. So would you be able to provide council with additional information in that respect?
CO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. With your indulgence, I'll pass things over to Director Heron, who can probably put it a little more eloquently than I can.
Director Heron?
Thank you, Your Worship. And in response to Deputy Mayor Cabral, I think the gist of the report, going beyond simply responding to council's requests for information on those 4 bullet items, is to look to the future of the township. What we have seen to date, and we all know this, but it's worth repeating, is that the growth of the township is highly directed by the province through the growth plan and through the squaring off of settlement area boundaries, and thou shalt not grow beyond those boundaries, thou shalt plan for within those boundaries. And we do see that we have the numbers to grow to 2051. The difficulty with that is that it's difficult to predict a market out to 2051. So the benefit of looking at our own future through further study and more update study is that if we look to Bill 185 and the new Provincial Plan 2024, it redirects away from provincial oversight to making decisions at the local level. The benefit to the township there is that we will see growth. And in looking at where can we grow sequentially and responsibly is going to be really helpful to both the township, the population, and the development industry. The development industry thrives on knowing what the rules are so that their investment is not at risk when they come forward. They want certainty. So in going forward with such a study, what we would be looking at is we have our settlement area boundaries, but are there areas within the boundaries and maybe just outside the boundaries that could be developed sooner in a more responsible and sequential manner? So we know that we will be seeing growth. We're right beside a huge growth area. And we're already seeing that interest coming to us through the multiple requests for MZOs. And that's simply an indicator that the development industry sees the growth plan is also getting in the way of what they see as market value in terms of growth. So where the report, I think the underlying tone of the entire report is that this is a good thing. It allows us to sit down and look at our own future and devise policies for growth for our own future. It helps us to devise our own internal structure and how we build the township organization itself to meet that growth that's coming to us so that we're ready for it and not simply trying to respond to it all the time. That's the benefit to this.
Thank you. I had Councillor Thompson and Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So like Deputy Mayor Brell, I'd like to thank staff for this, what I would call a significant report. I think there's a significant amount of time, effort, and taxpayers' money that went into this report. Having said that, for me, and maybe I'm reading a different report, there's really nothing new that I didn't know beforehand that's in this report or could have assumed. I can't approve this adding extra money to the taxpayers. As a township, we don't really have a great track record of following the advice of professionals, of the consultants that we've hired in the past. If you go, this report refers to economic development within our township, I think about 40 times. And this past budget, we turned down hiring an economic development officer. And I think Deputy Mayor Cabral said it, really in our township, it's not time for economic development at that time, and we really missed an opportunity. In 2010, taxpayers in Springwater paid the largest economic development specialist in Canada, the Miller, Dickinson, and Blaise Inc. If you go on economic development, if you Google that for our township, this is the last report that we did that comes up. And they highlighted that one, and I'm just taking these words right from the report, our municipal government needs to be more forthcoming and willing to work with people. And if you go and you read the details of all these cross-border agreements that are in this report, there's 9 of them. On 8 of them anyways, there was some collaboration, there was some kind of meeting, there was some kind of a negotiation. And in all of them, there was an exchange. There was either an exchange of money or an exchange of land that were beneficial to both. And we seemed not to be willing to, number one, even have a discussion with our neighbors to cooperate in any way, or to be willing to give in any way to come to find some kind of solution. Second, this report from 2010, the largest in Canada economic development specialist said, we suffer from having access to suitable industrial property. It is a big problem if business cannot find a suitable location to locate here. And we just experienced that. We heard that TNR Doors tried to locate in Springwater, and we weren't willing to allow them to do that. So they took their $40 million investment to a municipality that was interested in economic development. And that is Zone 4 that staff has highlighted as a possible economic development zone within our township. And we walked away from that. And third, and these kind of comments bother me, they should bother all of us, that Springwater suffers from a past total lack of vision. And I think we need to correct that. And it's interesting that when in 2010, when this report came out, it's interesting that the mayor was our new consultant, Mr. Georges, when this report came out, and he did really nothing with it. We've tried, some have tried. The planning department has recommended, I think for 2 budgets now that I've been here, that this be a priority, that we look at economic development. And now that others don't have a lack of vision for our lands, the province and some of our neighboring municipalities seem to have great vision for our lands. Now, all of a sudden, we seem to have a concern, and we seem to want to create our own vision for these lands. I think that's a mistake. It's time for us to stop this, stop wasting taxpayers' money, stop spending time on these things, and get in a room with the provincial land facilitator and work out something that's reasonable, beneficial to both parties. And I think there's a path forward here that we can all win. And we need to put our personal differences aside, our own personal interests aside, and do what's best for our community.
Thank you. And before I go to Deputy Cabral and Councillor Moore, I'm still gonna try for myself anyway to separate what's being asked here from the negotiations with the city of Barrie. I think that the request, a growth and economic viability within the township is something that I think it's simply a responsibility of us. The last time that we had the Midhurst secondary plan that I don't want to say shadowed, but it was the focus of this township for many, many years. And now that we're seeing that come to fruition and we're getting red line after red line and that's done. That goal has been achieved. And the question then becomes is what's next? What does Springwater look 20 years from now? How do we best plan for that? And while I agree that there are opportunities that are continually brought forward to us, I find us to be almost reactionary to those. It's when someone has an opportunity, they bring it forward to, oh, how does that fit into our plan when we don't have a plan? So I think that it is absolutely the responsibility of this municipality to come up with what and design and lead and you know, you hear it said all the time, drive the bus. Not to get run over by it, but drive the bus. As far as the negotiations with the city of Barrie, yes, this is happening. I'm not pretending, but I don't want them to be melded together. I don't think that us going out and defining our future is in reaction to what's happening from Barrie and from the province, regardless of whether that was happening or not. This is the responsible path forward. And as Deputy Cabral does have the mic next, I would like the meeting that you're proposing, the special meeting, is that specific to the negotiations with the city of Barrie?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. That would be specific to what our position is going to be, and hopefully at that meeting, we will be able to come to some consensus. I don't see us bartering with the city of Barrie, to be quite honest with you, and I'm looking at Councillor Thompson. I see us reaching out to the province and showing the province that Springwater Township is not only capable, but willing to address every need that the province pushes our way. As a matter of fact, through the last 3 MZOs that this council has approved, we're talking over 3,000 homes proposed. I'd also like to reach back out, Mr. Thompson or Councillor Thompson, because you weren't on council at the time when TNR doors came before us. That was a greenbelt, agricultural land. I read the MZO, Minister Zoning legislation. And what was being proposed there was not right at that time. It may be right today because the province has changed many, many facets of land use. But for us, our official plan denotes that we do have sufficient employment lands. At the county, they also concurred. We have sufficient employment lands. So I think what it really boils down to is where you put industry, where you put residences, and where you continue to farm. That was a buffer zone between Springwater Township and the city of Barrie, where TNR's was planning on going. Reality is, yes, you're right. They did go to Oro-Medonte, but they went to Oro-Medonte to an area that was properly zoned for what they wanted to do. There was no MZO required. That's how it should happen. Things should go where the plan denotes, because you can't have people just building houses here, building a development there, putting a factory here because they happen to buy the property. So if you're going to talk about a 2010 report on economic development, I would suggest that you go back and look at what actually happened at the meetings of September 2021 and April of 2022 and review what the legislation was at that time, and also consider looking at an MZO that came out by the airport where someone asked for an MZO, made a nice presentation, and then a short time later, maybe months later, just after the September of 2021, I think it was January or February of 2022, and it's been in the news, the person who asked for that tried to flip that piece of property for over $20 million. So I think it's one thing to say that, you know, we're walking down the wrong path. I'll tell you, my position right now is to try and keep Springwater whole. Whatever tax base is in place now in Springwater in 20 years, if we get the opportunity to develop it, is tax base that our residents will benefit from. And if we give it away, it's gone.
I do have Counselor Moore and Fisher and Alexander. But just as a further to that, so the amendment that's being put forward, the discussion that we're wanting to have, the goal of that meeting is to come up with a response to the province and city of Barrie regarding the proposed boundary adjustments. Is that correct?
Mayor Coughlin, I think part and partial to it, that's exactly what the meeting should be for. I think at that meeting, we might find out that we're in a position to reach out to the facilitator or to reach out to the Minister Calandra directly and see where we can take it from there. Unfortunately, what happened is there was a reconsideration with respect to the boundary adjustment piece. So to suggest that we're going to be able to go to the city of Barrie and discuss that, we can't. It's been taken off the table.
And I would agree. However, last week during our meeting, 4 members of council did waive our procedural bylaw. So to suggest that it's off the table and it can't happen, it can happen. We just need to procedurally make sure that we move forward in a very transparent way. I want to make sure that if this is what the discussion is going to be, that we are just open to the public. This is what we're going to be discussing, and we make sure that we don't have any contrary motions on the table at the time. I have Councillors Moore, Fisher, and Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'll say thank you to Director Heron for that very informative and thorough report. I thought it was fantastic. And I thought that it also laid a foundation and a framework for both council and the township staff in a way that we can gain valuable insights. It'll assist us to move the township forward in a positive direction. I really, I was happy to read it. And although I know you have limitations that you noted within the report, I think that there's lots of opportunity there. So what I'd like to really propose is that this council agree to creating, and we'll have more conversation hopefully at a closed session meeting. I was glad to hear you mention that, Deputy Mayor Cabral, because I would like to have a closed session meeting as well. Partly though, because I would like to create a subcommittee or a task force that we can address those 4 key areas that you have alluded to. And I think that there is opportunity then for those members. I don't know what it would comprise of just yet, but those members then can bring recommendations back to council. I think things would happen in a much quicker fashion, a much more focused fashion, and that we can hopefully move conversations in the direction that they need to go. If one being a consultant for the first piece, that's fair. If one is conversation about cross-border servicing, that's fair, but at least it will provide us a really sincere focus on the key points that you made in the report. So I would like to propose that and ask the council support the creation of a committee.
Thank you. And has that been communicated with Clerk Ainsworth? Okay, so
Is it a friendly amendment?
no, I'm just curious if you could just elaborate then the committee that you're looking to form would pertain specifically to
the 4 items in the report. So I can speak to them if you'd like. I can get my, sorry. So item 1, sorry, I'm trying to maneuver my computers without a mouse. Well, item 2 is explore potential locations for the special economic zones where collaboration with the neighboring municipalities may be realized. And I think that speaks to the special economic zones that were outlined in the report. Item 3 was, sorry, I have to go down now. I think you can pull the report, Clerk Ainsworth, and please just look at item 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just because it's hard for me to maneuver on here.
And the idea then is to appoint 3 members of council to each of those for creating a subcommittee. And is this aside from hiring a consultant or this is on
I
top of
think that
hiring?
that's the first consideration for the committee is sort of what the consultant scope of work would be. I don't have terms of reference just yet. I don't have a membership just yet. So that would be also discussed in closed session with all of council.
And I'll just turn to Clerk Ainsworthy for the appropriateness of resolving into closed for that.
Not right now.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The creation of a committee or task force, I'll use the word committee, would require, could have a maximum of 3 members of council. Determining the terms of reference for that committee, appointing membership, that would have to be done in open session.
Okay.
And the mandate would need to be specified to ensure that the committee is tasked with exactly what council would like to task this committee with. So should the direction this evening be to create a committee, staff would need to come back at a future meeting with potential terms of reference for council to consider. Council could decide at that time who to appoint to the committee, could make appointments this evening, depending on where council would like to go with it. And then depending on the mandate of the committee and if it would fit within closed session requirements, they may be able to go into closed session depending on the topic. And I do understand that the 3 points that you were mentioning where the 4 points were from the original direction from back in March that are included within the report. Is that correct?
Councilor Moore? Councilor Moore?
Thank you. If it, because I'm not sure if Deputy Mayor Cabral is feeling a sense of urgency to get this closed session meeting dealt with, I mean, we could certainly look at appointing members right now. I think the points on Director Heron's report speak to exactly what the tasks would be for the committee. And so I think it would be as simple as 3 members of council being appointed right now and moving forward. That way, we're not holding up your closed session meeting.
I'm going to turn to CEO Schmidt, and I do have Councillor Fisher, Alexander, Thompson after this.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan, and through you to maybe Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, or indulgence maybe, or consideration. I think, item 1 and item 2 is really kind of would shape the scope of the project that we're looking at for the consultant to undertake. And it is mentioned in the report that our friends to the south here, New Tecumseh, is basically has engaged in that type of process. They've hired a consultant to essentially look at areas outside of their existing settlement areas to determine how best or where growth could or should happen. And I think, in addition to that, we could include in the scope of the RFP that in addition to that exercise, have them potentially look at exploring special economic zones that have been identified in the report this evening to provide some additional expertise from them to council for council's consideration. So that could form part of the scope of this RFP. So I just throw that out there for your consideration.
Councillor Fisher.
Just a few comments. Just going back to what Councillor Thompson had said about TNR doors. Earlier on this evening, we supported a resolution from the Ag Board to inform them, the farmers in Springwater, about any potential building or changes of zoning to agricultural land. This is exactly why. The case of TNR doors is exactly why. Trying to build on agricultural land when there's suitable land to build somewhere else is exactly why the Ag Board wants to know about these types of things going on. So, we unanimously supported it, but we have to know that this is exactly the case of why they want to know, because they don't want agricultural land to be taken out of production, particularly when there's land set aside for commercial and industrial uses. And my second point, we should be focused on keeping Springwater whole. We do offer a lot, and I think that economically we can absolutely grow within our own borders. We don't need to move a border in order to see growth. It's absolutely not necessary. And I'll say this, I don't know why. I'll say it's certain members of council are pushing so hard to get to this as I've said before, this mythical table to try and auction off our land. I don't think it's necessary, and I think that if we pause for a moment and actually look at ways that we can grow economically within our own border, that we'd find that we don't need to give up anything to gain something if we gain anything at all. Economic zones are very smart, and we can absolutely grow within our own borders. We have the means to. I think we have the expertise to, and yeah, I don't see any need. And frankly, I'll say this: what I'm hearing from the public time and time again in all of our wards, by the way, people who I talk to, they absolutely want to keep Springwater whole as well, and they understand that this council is actually doing quite a bit to see growth, whether it's housing development, whether it's economic growth on Bayfield Street, for example. I think we're well equipped to do an excellent job with it. And the idea that we need to go to a table to give something up in order to gain is something I reject, and I think you'll find that many of our residents do as well.
Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you to staff for the report. I personally did learn a lot out of the report. The two things that really stood out to me was the one area on the cross-border servicing and the number of municipalities that are currently doing that with mutual benefit options. When we talked about cross-border servicing with the city of Barrie, which was the original reason we went to the table with them, at no point were we asking for it for nothing for free. So I think we have a number of examples where, a number of different municipalities are doing that. So I think there is opportunity there for us to potentially move forward in that situation. And the second piece that I really found interesting was the County of Simcoe's service delivery review, and the fact that directly from the report that Director Heron gave us was that the Simcoe Water and Wastewater Service Delivery Review firmly established the county's role in assisting its local member municipalities with establishing formal partnerships and potential municipal or intermunicipal servicing solutions. This is what we pay our taxes to the county for. It's for them to help us. So those two things in their own were of huge value, and I think can help guide us as we try and navigate the situation that we're in. So thank you for the report, and however we decide to move forward with this report, I do think we need to action it in some way. And I do agree with you, Mayor Coughlin, with the comment that we're often reactionary up here. The presentation is before us and we're backpedaling and trying to figure out how we're going to put it in there. And I feel like with this report as a basis, with moving ahead with the consultant, with an RFP for the consultant, we're allowing us to build that vision so we aren't being reactionary, and we do have a plan moving forward, which is our plan, which then also does obviously go into the whole city of Barrie negotiation, annexation, whatever we're going to call it, but we need to figure out what we're doing first. And I feel like the report and some of the amendments coming forward out of it will allow us to do that.
Councillor Thompson and Councillor Garwood.
Well, my final comment on this is that I just don't agree with the course that we're going on this. We're acting like we're the decision maker, and I think that arrogance is going to catch up with us. We are children of the province. It's not our land, it's the province's land. And they see us not being cooperative in this, and the Premier has come out and said that in a press conference, and has asked us to offer more cooperation with our neighbors. And I see it not a wise decision not to be, whether it's a table, whether it's a room, no matter what it is. I think it's time to get back in the game, back in the discussions. At least in 3 of these economic zones, the owners of these properties have already sent letters to the province recommending that they go with the city of Barrie's plan. And that concerns me. If we lose this land because of our arrogance, because of our lack of vision, I think that would be a shame on us. And that's a risk that I'm not willing to take. I think we should be back at the table, giving our opinion and not letting someone make these decisions without at least our input.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. And I do agree that the conversation about whether there's a table or a conversation the province doesn't send a facilitator if a conversation doesn't need to be facilitated. So that whether or not it's a table or not, and I do agree that many members of the public have a lot of comments and remarks on this, and they're not all one-sided. I do take note in that the idea of a kiddie table has been presented, that we need to get to the big table, that this is this conversation about whether a table exists or not, there is a conversation happening. The province thinks there's a conversation happening, or they wouldn't have appointed a facilitator. They don't appoint people who are making $280,000 a year to come down and do nothing. At this time, I have Councillor Garwood and then Deputy Cabral. I saw your hand.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm going to take a bit of a maybe a different direction here. I see this almost as three separate discussions and three separate motions. So that's how I've broken it down, at least. And first of all, I wanted to thank Director Heron and staff for the report. I learned a lot, so thank you. The growth management analysis piece, the RFP, moving forward with that, I support that. I believe that we need to make, as I said at the last meeting, data-driven decisions, and let's secure those professionals, demographers, economists, engineers, planners, etc. But I see that as the motion that is presented here tonight as one singular piece. I then see a conversation, I believe it was an amendment that was brought forward, I believe by the Deputy Mayor and maybe Councillor Moore, form of it, in regards to a closed session discussion, whether that's closed or open, etc., in regards to facilitations, cross-border services, etc. I see that as a separate piece. And then the third piece, which was brought forward by Councillor Moore, in regards to moving forward with committees. Again, I'm not sitting here disagreeing with any of these items. I just see them as almost three separate items. I personally would like to see them discussed and voted upon separately. That is my preference. I'm not here disagreeing. I have shared my opinion and thoughts in regards to discussions with our neighbor consistently. I have not changed that stance, but I see what this report brings forward, what the intention of the report. I seconded Deputy Mayor Cabral's motion for this report initially because I saw value in the information that was going to come forward. And I said that, and I appreciate that. So thank you again, staff. So I'm happy to support the RFP forward, but I'd like the discussions potentially to be separate. I think that they are all very important and they are large, and I don't see them as friendly amendments. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I am going to ask that my motion go forward and see where it lands. I think the fact that the information regarding the economists, topographical maps, all of the professionals is in fact inclusive of the report. So I don't really see them as two different things. I think they go hand in hand, and I'm happy to support the staff report and also a subsequent meeting. So I would like it to continue. I might suggest that possibly with the committee piece, if we're going to appoint folks at this table tonight, that maybe that could be done as a separate piece. I'm happy to support that too. But the last comment is something that's really I'm kind of finding perplexing, and I have to ask myself, because I do try and keep abreast of what's printed in the newspaper and what's on the news, and you know, there's been mention of substantial monies in the past, and now I'm hearing that Councillor Thompson is aware of 3 letters that went to the provincial government in support of certain economic zones. Councillor Thompson, I just want to know, do you have more insight into what's going on with respect to the boundary adjustment in Barrie than anybody else on this council? And I will point out that Mayor Coughlin and myself have been to a number of things. So if it was in the paper, I apologize, but I certainly didn't see it.
And maybe Councillor Thompson can share the link that's available with the rest of the council.
Yeah, it was in the Barrie staff report. I think it was December the 6th of, if you could maybe confirm that, CEO Smith.
CEO Schmidt, I believe it was the meeting that wasn't a tribunal, but it was the when the provincial, they called them and the city of Barrie made a presentation. Standing committee, thank you very much. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. I believe what Councillor Thompson's referring to is on the Barrie website as it relates to their official plan. And maybe Director Heron might be able to help me here too, because I think him and I just had a recent chat about this. I believe the city of Barrie sent a response to Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding comments on their official plan and revisions, and it was 700-800 page document. And I believe within that document, there's an appendix that shows letters of support from various business owners within the area that we're talking about. And that's
Thank
correct.
you, Deputy Cabral, and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, I stand corrected and I offer my sincere apologies, sir. I did not read that in the 800-page report, but I do commend you for doing so, and I apologize for my remarks, sir.
Well, thank you, Deputy Mayor Cabral, for the apology. Apology accepted. It was a very extensive report. It was a very boring report, but I read through the entire report and it was very concerning to me to see our residents sending letters to the province supporting the city of Barrie's proposal to take their land. When I know every one of them would much rather do business with us. Doing business with us is less expensive. I think it would be quicker for them to get shovels in the ground. And they're all connected to our community. And why would our residents be so frustrated with us to go to such an extreme measure to send a letter to the province to support the position of the city of Barrie? Again, I'll reiterate, I am not willing to take the risk of letting the province come in and decide here without our input. And without some of us, without our mayor and CAO at the table, in the room, whatever it is, a kiddie table, whatever it is, expressing our concerns and being there to have our best interests in mind.
We have Councillors Fisher and Moore.
Councillor Thompson, if they'd much rather do business with us, then certainly they would be in support of maybe seeing these economic zones if they saw it fit to do business here. But I can tell you, 3 members of the community who no doubt stand to benefit, writing letters would hardly be enough to budge me into giving land to Barrie. You know, it's hardly a reason. You know, I'm sure they have their motivations, but it's hardly a reason for me to go ahead and go to this, I'll say it, the mythical table to give away land. But you made a quote tonight that I think sort of speaks to your outlook. You quoted, "It's not our land, it's the province's land." Well, we were elected by people in Springwater, or the taxpayers of Springwater. We represent those people. You know, I don't subscribe to the same defeatist attitude that eventually the province gets to do whatever they want. As a matter of fact, I have been told, and I am also under the impression, that the province wants us to demonstrate that we are actually in control of what goes on within our borders and that we have an appetite to see growth within our own borders. I think what's being proposed tonight actually speaks to that. I think that some of our actions, frankly, leading up to this point have spoke to that. And looking to develop ourselves economically speaks to it in the future. Provincially, I don't think they're looking to move this border to somebody else. And I think that we have a great opportunity to demonstrate to the province, apparently we're children of the province, you know, that we can actually do this within our own borders. Once again, this is our land, and I think we do have autonomy and sovereignty over it, and we can develop it as we see fit.
Thank you. I have Councillor Moore, Alexander, Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I was expecting when we received this report that there would be a financial feasibility piece, but it wasn't included in the report, and it may have been missed in directions. So that could have been Director Heron. Also, I'm considering that there was part of that conversation that will need to take place in closed session, and understandably so, if we're identifying lands potentially, or sort of what the overall impacts to our township would be. So that's just another reason that I support the closed session meeting. I support the legal opinion, and hopefully from a a legal or a lawyer who specializes in things like expropriation. So I can ask the lawyer questions that are important to this township. I'm in support of creating a committee that makes this township and our council look like we are A, in control, and B, moving in a progressive and modern, positive manner. It is not negative to think of the future of your township. I'd have a question though for CAO Schmidt, and it goes back to something that the mayor had said. I just need clarification. Have we in fact been appointed a provincial facilitator?
Thank you. And if I've misspoke that the facilitator was sent, I'm under the impression that no facilitator has yet to be appointed, but I do believe that CEO Schmidt did send the facilitator communication that we have exhausted communication. So I don't know if you've received anything further from a facilitator at this time.
Through you, Mayor Coggan, to Councillor Morris. So to answer your question, to my knowledge, the provincial facilitator has yet to be appointed. They have reached out to all three municipalities, to, like I said in the last meeting, to my colleagues, just doing a discovery, if you will, investigative type meeting, just to kind of explore whether or not each municipality would be interested in possibly participating in a voluntary facilitated process. So at this stage, there has not been anything official that I'm aware of. To Mayor Coughlin's point, the facilitator is aware of this evening's report, and may even be listening on the live stream. That said, he is very aware of the comments and the decisions that council has made thus far, and will continue to reach out to ensure that he has the most up-to-date information. And I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So Councillor Thompson, I'm a bit confused by some of your comments, because in one sense, I feel like you're saying we have to do whatever Barrie wants, because otherwise the province is just going to mandate it. So there's not really this need for the staff report and going out to RFP and building our own plan. I feel like what I've heard over the last few months, and again tonight, is that the province is actually looking at downloading a lot of these decisions and responsibilities to municipalities because they want them to take control of their future, which I think is exactly what we're trying to do here. And with respect to the facilitator, I think, and I'm certainly not going to speak for everyone at this table, I'm only going to speak for myself. When the vote was to stop the discussion, it was so we could figure out where we were and what we wanted to do. Now that we have this report, and once we have the ability to digest it a bit and maybe have another meeting on it, we may go back and say, okay, we're ready for the facilitator, because now we have an idea of what we want in the direction that we're going in. This is all, everything we've done to this point, from my perspective, is to get the background information, to do our due diligence, so we can move forward. And if that is with discussions with Barrie, if they need to be, or whether it's cross-border servicing or whatever that is, we needed the information in order to make those decisions happen. Otherwise, we're going in blind, and Springwater is going to end up getting hurt from it, because Barrie, I'm not even sure if Barrie has a plan. Mayor Nuttall has a plan. I'm not sure that Mayor Nuttall has the support of his council, because I'm not sure this has even been brought to his council table. Certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure. So I do think it is our responsibility to do our due diligence on this, and that's what we're doing right now in order to get that plan.
Thank you. I have Councillor Garwood and followed by Deputy Mayor. I would agree that if that's the direction this council wants to go in, then that's let's do that. But I think that all the process in which it's happening, with amendments to motions and amendments to which in front of us, I don't want there to ever be an opportunity where the members of public can come back to us and say we weren't transparent in how we are moving forward. I think that if we are going to be scheduling a meeting to discuss the city of Barrie and the negotiations, that's a simple notice of motion. It'll come forward, we'll discuss it, we'll move forward. Special meetings can be called, that's not a problem, but I think we asked for information, we got the information. If we received the information, to me, putting amendments on that, it just almost muddies what's before us. If we receive what we have today, put forward the special meeting. At that time, if there's committees to be formed, I'm of the opinion that the committees will simply bog us down. It'll just slow us down. It's, you know, the whole red tape analogy. I think that it's just adding to it. I think that if this is the process that we're moving forward and we're going to finally have a discussion about a proposal and I guess a response to the city of Barrie, I'm happy to do that. I would like to see it kept separate though, so that it's not this council trying, I don't want to say to fast forward something, but I don't see how scheduling meetings, like I get that this information was intended to help us make a decision, but adding all these different amendments with committees and special meetings onto receiving a report, I don't see it. I agree with Councillor Garwood and I see it as two separate things. Councillor Garwood and then Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yeah, I think we're running around in circles here. I think we continue to have the same conversation. Deputy Mayor Cabral, could you, if I may indulge me here, could you potentially expand or provide more information in regards to the scope on the discussion, the special meeting that you're looking to have? I just would like some clarification, understanding there has been a few amendments proposed here for transparency. Again, we continue to speak on that. Of course, it's so important. If I'm sitting here a bit confused, I can only imagine if somebody else is watching might be wondering exactly what we are voting on. Also understanding that there might be pieces of this that some of us support and pieces some of us do not support. So just trying to balance all of the amendments in front of us tonight. Thank you.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm just going to use an analogy here. Everybody gets to see the ball game get played, but you don't get to hear what the coach is telling the players on how to play the ball game. And other municipalities do go into closed sessions to formulate strategies. We're talking about intermunicipal relations. We're talking about a legal opinion. We're talking about staff that have indicated that in open session that there was confidential information that they weren't comfortable or weren't able to share with council in an open setting. So really what's happening right now is we've got our report. It's out in the open. Now it's time for us to get together collectively as a council, get some legal advice, speak to our staff, formulate our strategy and what we want to do going forward, and then present a report at that time, which will be public again, much the same as Oromadonti has done, to basically say, here's Springwater Township's position. Here's where we think we fit in the grand scheme of things. This is how we can address the concerns of employment and residential housing. And we would love to be able to do that. That's what this is actually about for me, is that Springwater Township does have an opportunity now. Maybe it's been forced upon us, but we have an opportunity. We have the land. They could have brought the battery plant to Springwater Township because we have the land to accommodate it. And at that point in time, if the province was the one that was pushing it, they would basically be able to say, this is where it's going to be. So there's going to be spin-offs from that too. There's spin-offs from the Alliston plant. Not everybody who works in Honda lives in Alliston. The other piece too, and there is a bit here, and I'm going to ask the clerk Ainsworth to read it, and I would ask that council support a meeting because that's the whole purpose of this whole endeavor, is for us to come together and formulate a plan and say, here's where Springwater Township stands. And here's what Springwater Township has to offer. We want to be a cooperative, respectful partner, not someone who is doing something because somebody else is trying to tell them what to do. I think that's unfair and it's unjust. So that's the purpose behind this. I don't see any problem with having another meeting to actually look at what's our path forward. And I don't see any problem with striking a committee that can also work in the background at the same time. But I would ask the clerk to read my amendment and I would ask that the vote be called. And I think it will also address the piece about the boundary adjustment because we're including that in due to conversation that the mayor brought up. So I would ask the clerk to read it and I would hope that we could vote on it. And I can hope that we can vote on it collectively together.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just to walk back a bit, the main motion that is on the table currently is to receive the report and that council directs staff to issue an RFP for the purpose of determining opportunities for settlement area expansion and report back. The amendment that Deputy Mayor Cabral has tabled would add that a special meeting of council be scheduled to further discuss and review the report and to consider, review, and formulate strategies and responses regarding the City of Barrie boundary adjustment proposal and potential provincial facilitator, and that legal counsel with expertise in the area of municipal affairs and municipal government be retained to attend the special meeting to advise council.
And so that has been moved by Deputy Cabral, and I have a seconder. I don't have a seconder. Councillor Fisher has seconded that. Councillor Moore? Councillor Moore?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to the clerk. So that I'm clear, my friendly amendment is subsequent to this.
Clerk Ainsworth? Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I would recommend that this be a subsequent amendment. So once this is dealt with, this amendment, you may table your amendment for the committee, should you wish.
Thank you.
Thank you. So council, we have Deputy Cabral's amendment and I have Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The CAO has asked me to add, to pull the amendment up on the screen, just to be able to review the wording. So that'll take me just a moment. And I also did want to maybe ask the CAO to clarify if there's any information that needs to be provided in regards to the timing of the RFP versus maybe the timing of this special meeting.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through to Clerk Ainsworth. Timing as it relates to the RFP, I think, assuming council's on board with having staff move forward, we would immediately start to draft that RFP. We obviously have some assistance with our friends that have already issued one. We just have to tailor it to our needs. So we would immediately start that. And then the idea would be is to issue that on our bids and tenders portal, and then report back to council with the results. Or we could essentially draft the RFP, bring it forward for council's consideration, and then issue it on bids and tenders. As for the special meeting, kind of in council's hands with regards to the special meeting. I'll leave it to council to decide when they would wish to have that.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Just so I'm clear, CEO Schmidt, assuming we do create a committee and the terms of reference for the committee or the mandate for the committee is to review the 4 items noted in the report, or not review, but to review and make recommendations potentially back to council on ways to move forward, that consultant piece is included as one of those 4. Is there, if we vote to move forward with what you're recommending though, does that muddy the mandate for the committee? So I just want to make sure that the committee then does have the authority to help guide what the consultant is going to achieve.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Moore. So Councillor Moore, what I would see, I guess, is that by having a committee involved, which is council's choice, it may delay the process. That's what I see, because essentially you're going to have to determine who the committees are, who the representatives are, what the terms of reference are. I don't know how long that's going to take. And then essentially those individuals are appointed, meet, and then discuss what the terms would be or what the scope of the project would be. That could be a couple months down the road. Whereas with the RFP, if we get permission tonight, we're going to be starting it fairly soon. And we could bring it back to council, like I said, for your endorsement before it gets actually published on bids and tenders, so that you're fully aware of what the scope is. And this council could obviously amend that before it's put out there. That is the other option. That timing wise, that's what I would recommend, but I'm in council's hands as to how you wish to proceed.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. I think it's a little muddy because what Director Heron has recommended in the report is not exactly what the amendment is on the table right now. We've added some things to it. So I would say that we can create a committee in terms of reference quickly. I don't see it being delayed. We just have to, again, focus on doing this, as expeditiously as possible. And we have to make it a priority, which is what I'm trying to do, is make all 4 of these a focus of this council. And so I say that we establish the committee first.
Thank you. And I do have an amendment on the floor, which has been moved and seconded. Clerk Ainsworth has advised that the idea of a committee or formulation of a committee would be separate from this. It would not be an amendment to the amendment. So it was brought up on the screen-ish, but I will ask Clerk Ainsworth to again read the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The amendment would read that the motion now before council be amended as follows: to add that a special meeting of council be scheduled to further discuss and review the report and to consider, review, and formulate strategies and responses regarding the City of Barrie boundary adjustment proposal and potential provincial facilitator and future development of Springwater Township, and that legal counsel with expertise in the area of municipal affairs and municipal government be retained to attend the special meeting to advise council.
Thank you, council. Is there anything further on this amendment? Not seeing any. All those in favor?
I'm going to be asking for a recorded vote, please, Mayor.
A recorded vote on the amendment, and I will turn to Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Once I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood?
Yes.
Councillor Alexander?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Councillor Fisher?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral?
Yes.
And Mayor Coughlin.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Thank you, council. We are now back to the main motion. I do believe Councillor Moore has a second amendment.
Thank you. I'll just ask the clerk to read it. Clerk Ainsworth, if it's not too much trouble, do you have those 4 bullet points from the report that would outline the mandate of the committee?
It's just going to be a minute.
Or if you can wordsmith that maybe in a way that encompasses that, would be helpful. Thank you.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a comment and if possible towards Councillor Moore. The sticking point is I'd like to see the RFP go forward. I'm wondering, this committee is not going to be simply comprised of members of council. I would assume that we'd be looking at the CAO to sit on the committee, as well as Mr. Heron, our director of planning. I'm wondering if that might actually fit right in with what you're looking for, because the 2 main staff members that would be involved in the RFP would actually be on the committee. So there would be that bit of dialogue back and forth. So I'm wondering if that would be, if it necessarily has to be part of the terms, or whether them being on the committee would serve the purpose of having some input into that into the consultant's scope.
I have Councillor Moore and Clerk Ainsworth for comment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. I assumed as much. Sorry if I didn't explain who the membership would be. So it would definitely be a minimum or a maximum, 3 members council, and whoever the CAO determines would be obviously the most important folks, including our director of planning. But certainly if somebody else you felt would be appropriate, I'm open to all of those who would like to participate.
Before I do go to Clerk Ainsworth, that she's typing here, I think that is the difficulty in something like this. We've heard it over and over again, that this is one of the most significant decisions or impacts that the township is going to experience. And I don't think there's one member at this table that's not going to want to sit on that committee. And I think that there is a process that has moved forward whereby RFQ goes out, RFP goes out, it's brought forward, the terms is brought to council as a whole, we discuss it as a whole, and we continue to move forward in that fashion. Adding in committee simply adds a step in between when it comes from staff to the committee and then from the committee to council. So I just see it as an extra step, and I don't see it expediting things, and I don't see it adding value to this process. Clerk Ainsworth and Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I am still drafting an appropriate amendment. However, I did want to mention committee composition would be members of council. Any staff support that are required would not need to be named as a member of the committee. They wouldn't have voting rights. However, they would be invited to various committee meetings depending on what expertise is required.
All right, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that, I chaired the Service Delivery Review Committee, which took us through the course of a year, maybe a year and a half. We did a ton of work. It was really productive. And I think it helped to drive decisions that the township has since made and continues to make because of that delivery review. So I feel committees are a very valuable way to focus on a certain issue and make informed decisions and bring recommendations back to council.
And I just, and for clarity, I do believe that committees as a whole do add value. I think in this specific instance, this is not adding value, but rather adding red tape. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think this council has made comments consistently that we are working off of different information. It's been mentioned multiple times tonight, even for instance. We talk about all wanting to be at the same table, on the same page. And clearly we have the ability to call special meetings. There's been proposed tonight. So I'm not quite sure the requirement of a committee where 3 members, as the mayor mentioned, I think everyone wants to sit on that committee and be a part of that conversation. Call a special meeting and have this be the committee. We are a committee. Make the decisions at this table, not have a committee meeting with staff resources associated to then report something and bring it back here for us to just discuss it anyway. We're going to have the same discussion. That committee can't make decisions, but this one can. So I will not support the creation of another committee. Of course, I believe the importance of committees. We all sit on them throughout the municipality for different reasons, but this is a discussion that we all need to be at the same table to have.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Based on the conversation, I've drafted the following. Please let me know if you'd like to see any changes or if I've missed anything. That the motion now before council be amended as follows: to add, and that a committee of council be created with a mandate to assist with creating the request for a proposal for the purpose of determining opportunities for settlement area expansions, and that the committee mandate also include further exploration of the 4 key items listed within the report, being 1, identify potential areas for increased residential and industrial development beyond current settlement area boundaries. 2, explore potential locations for special economic zones where collaboration with neighboring municipalities may be realized. 3, evaluate current municipal cross-border servicing agreements across Ontario. 4, consider collaboration with the County of Simcoe regarding a regional water and wastewater infrastructure model that would support further development of employment lands. And further, that a terms of reference be brought forward for council's consideration based on the noted criteria.
Councillor Alexander and Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So personally, I do think having the committee would allow us to move forward with staff in an expedited manner in this. It allows you for weekday meetings. Again, I think we all agree this is such an important topic. We can't all be up here every week having these conversations. I think those one-off conversations with staff to do a bit of a deep dive and come back and report to council is important. And in terms of the makeup of the committee, not that I don't want to be on it, because this is so important to me. When I look at this, and we're not choosing it, but I'm going to tell you my thoughts on this, is the makeup of this committee would be Mayor Coughlin, Deputy Mayor Cabral. They have been at the table with the city Barry thus far, having those conversations. And then if interested would be Counselor Moore. She's brought the motion forward, a good piece of her land. That's where the boundary adjustments occur. So she definitely has a vested interest in with respect to her ward. And on top of that, it's the three most senior members of council who have more experience than us. So again, not that I don't want to be, but to me, that would be the decision that I would be looking forward to, not just putting myself on there because I do have a vested interest in it, but I think that would be the responsible way to move forward.
Councillor Starwood and then Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think we can all have those one-off conversations with staff respectfully. I think we have and we continue to do so. I think we are all up here looking for this to be in an expedited fashion. But CAO Schmidt just sat here 10 minutes ago and spoke to the fact that it could be months for this to occur. And I know Councillor Moore had brought forward the idea of, well, we need to make this a priority. But I think everything that we bring forward at this table becomes a priority for staff because that's the direction that is provided. So I struggle to sit here and say, make it happen when we know the resources that we have are sitting here and they consistently make it happen, but there's only so much time in a day. So again, respectfully, I think these 4 topics here, as I mentioned, I supported the report in the first place. I supported the amendment that was brought forward. This is important information. I want to be a part of the conversation. Do I expect to be a part of the committee when it's created? Again, I believe that if there is a committee, even though I don't agree in having one, the mayor and the deputy mayor should absolutely sit on that committee. So I can't support this need because I do not see this helping us with expediting anything. It is more red tape and it is slowing us down. We've been talking about this now for almost a year now. 2026 is fast approaching and there's only so much more time that the 7 of us get to have these conversations sitting at this table. So I don't want this to be delayed any longer than it is. We talk about it being the most important decision that this council is going to make this term. Agreed. Let's have it together. And I'm pleased to see that we want to come back to a table, whatever that table might be, and have these discussions and make a plan and work with data and listen to legal professionals. Absolutely. I agree with that. I've been saying that for the past 9 months. So I cannot support this committee and I'd like a recorded vote, please.
Councillor, sorry, I had Alexander Fisher and the Deputy Cabral.
The more I listen to the proposition of a committee, the more I like it. I actually disagree that it would add red tape. I actually think it would allow us to have more discussions throughout the week and expedite things. I just wanted to touch on what Councillor Alexander had said. I think that her composition of what a committee would look like actually holds true. It's 3 of the senior members of council. Although my ward would be affected, and I would love to be on the committee. I actually think that they would be well served with those 3, and so I am in support of it. I will support this, and I think that this allows us to work more diligently, in between meetings and have them come back to council. So I'm in full support, and anything we can do to head this off at the pass is something we need to do.
Deputy Cabral and then Clerk Ainsworth, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm trying to, are we saying that we won't be able to allow staff to go forward with the RFP? Because for me, that's a very, very important piece. And I don't think it needs necessarily to be tied to the formation of a committee. However, I'll be honest and say that if that is tied to it, I wouldn't probably be able to support it. I think that having staff members available after the RFP goes out would provide the committee opportunity to make recommendation and have dialogue with staff. I don't want to hinder staff in moving forward with that. As far as it being a long drawn out process, I don't necessarily see that as being a hindrance because I think the committee would be able to actually meet a little bit more often and source out and have meetings that we collectively, aren't going to be able to do on a regular basis. But I think the committee might be able to be in a position to move beyond this, especially when it comes to consolidating and reaching out, number 4, with the county itself and making some inroads there. I think the county as a member municipality, we support the county. I think the county has an obligation to support its members. And I think the committee might be able to forge that bridge outside of what this council might do with respect to setting our position for the facilitator. I don't necessarily see these as being intertwined like that. I see the council as a whole being able to move forward with a position. And then if the committee can bring back some information in a timely fashion, we can utilize it. But I really think that since the RFP might go on for a few months, we might be in a position to present something and solidify our strategy and still have the committee forging ahead forward after everything's been done, even if we do involve a facilitator. So I do see value in the committee. So I think I would support it, but unfortunately, I won't be able to support it if it's tied into the RFP. I think that's an important piece that has to happen tonight. So I would ask Councillor Moore if she might disengage that. I could support it.
And before I do go to Councillor Moore, I did see CEO Schmidt and Clerk Ainsworth were both wanting input. Is that right? CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Just trying to process Deputy Mayor's comments. So I would agree, and I think what I may suggest is we've had other processes, and some members of council, most members of council probably won't recall this because you weren't on council, but when we went through our long range financial plan, we essentially developed a term or scope for the project that came to council. You agreed, they agreed on the scope. We issued the RFP. And then when we engaged the consultant or we awarded the project to the consultant, we had a committee actually engage with the consultant and have discussions and to provide some direction and some dialogue. So that is another way that we may be able to arrange for this is, again, you can select your committee, but maybe the committee is part of the discussion with the consultant once the consultant is awarded or engaged. Just another thought.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to CEO Schmidt. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think that is good use of both our times. I think that gives you the opportunity to move forward with the RFP, have that in place and bring it back to the committee. Then the committee can review the terms of reference and we can, I don't know if we're going to give direction. I think we'll talk about that in the closed session meeting, sort of what the responsibilities and sort of what our flexibility is for votes or not voting and bring just recommendations back to council. But I think that'll have to be sussed out at the closed session meeting when we have that. But yeah, okay, I'm fine with that.
And before I do go back to CEO Schmidt, I'll turn to Clerk Ainsworth. Discussion about terms and appointments to committees, that all has to be in open, correct?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yes, the establishing of the terms of reference for the committee must happen in open session, be approved by council in open session, and then move forward from there in closed session should the topic merit and be within the scope of the Municipal Act allowances.
Clerk Ainsworth, and I did have Councillor Garwood. Am I missing anybody else before I see Clerk Ainsworth, CEO Schmidt, and then Councillor Garwood?
Thank you. And I just wanted to make comment based on the committee structure. So just for council to have a reminder, committees do require the same process that council undertakes. The meeting date needs to be advertised, an agenda needs to be released with the information made as publicly as possible. If there is a closed session, what the topic of the closed session would be with notice about 6 days prior to the meeting. So just so council is aware, there are those timelines as well that we need to tie to committee meetings.
Thank you, CEO Schmidt and Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Cogman. I just wanted to clarify kind of what I was suggesting. So the idea is that with council's approval of moving forward with an RFP, staff would go ahead and develop a scope for the RFP. We would bring that draft scope back to council as a whole for your consideration and for any potential amendments. Council would then hopefully give us direction to go ahead and issue that RFP with that scope. We would go out to the market. We would engage a consultant. Council would be involved in the awarding of that engagement with the consultant. And then once awarded, the committee that you form, that committee could engage with the consultant. So the committee, you can have your committee formed at any point in time between now and then. But I think the idea would be is the committee could be formed part of the discussions with the consultant along with staff. So they would be involved in that piece. They wouldn't necessarily be involved in developing the terms of reference for the RFP as the deputy mayor had indicated. I think, again, unless you strike your committee tonight, I think there is going to be a delay. And when I originally commented on the committee piece, I was of the mindset that when you mentioned committee, that it could be some public members, and hence why I said it could be 2 or 3 months, because if you're having public members on the committee, we have to appoint them. So that's where I was going with the time frame. So I just wanted to clarify that piece.
Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. I was going to ask you to provide that overview to council in regards to the structure of booking meetings and whatnot for committee meetings. So just to clarify as well, so staff will book a meeting and go through the structure and the process, create an agenda. The 3 members of council will meet, go to that meeting. Information will be then summarized, most likely in a report or something casual. Then we will either add it to an existing agendas meeting here, or then call a special meeting, which we could have just done in the first place, and have the discussion based upon the information that came from the meeting, from the committee meeting with 3 people. So if I'm understanding the structure correct here, we all know this council has done it. We can call a special meeting with petition with 4 members, or the mayor can call one. So why do we need a committee? Why can't we come to this table, have this conversation with the 7 of us? Having 3 members of council at a separate date at a separate time does not move us forward. It adds more time for staff resources to then come back, summarize what you discussed. Personally, I can't be a fly on the wall in that meeting and in that discussion. I would like to understand what is happening there, but I can only do so with the summary that is provided by the 3 members that attend. So there are 4 other members, and while the other 4 members are the newest members of council, we have collective and equal seats and equal votes at this table.
And I think the meetings would have to be open to the public, so you're more than welcome to be a fly on the wall. Or I can be a fly on a wall. I do feel like we're belaboring this. I would like to, if that's what, Councillor Moore, and to have this moved by Councillor Moore, and it was seconded by Councillor Fisher, I believe. Seconded by Councillor Fisher. Thank you. Council, if there's anything further on the formation of a committee and a recorded vote. And, oh, sorry, Councillor Alex.
Sorry, I just want to clarify a point. Have we removed the RFP going ahead without the creation of the committee? Or is it, I just want to suss out exactly where we are with that piece.
Clerk Ainsworth will read the motion again.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and I believe Councillor Moore has agreed to change that piece with the RFP. Based on that, I have drafted the following to add to the main motion, and that a committee of council be created with a mandate to further explore for further exploration of the 4 key items listed within the report, being 1, identify potential areas for increased residential and industrial development beyond current settlement area boundaries. 2, explore potential locations for special economic zones where collaboration with neighboring municipalities may be realized. 3, evaluate current municipal cross-border servicing agreements across Ontario. 4, consider collaboration with the County of Simcoe regarding a regional water and wastewater infrastructure model that would support further development of employment lands. And further, that the committee mandate also include work with the successful consultant once awarded. And further, that a terms of reference be brought forward for council consideration based on the noted criteria.
Thank you. And a recorded vote has been called. Is there anything further, council? Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Once I state your name, please state yes or no. And again, this is simply on this amendment. Councillor Garwood.
No.
Councillor Alexander.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
No.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral,
Yes.
and Mayor Coughlin.
No.
That amendment is carried.
Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth, if I can have you read through the main motion as amended for council, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The main motion as amended would read that the report from the Director of Planning and Development entitled Request for Information, Potential Future Options and Areas for Growth and Economic Viability within the Township of Springwater dated May 15, 2024 be received, and that council directs staff to issue a request for proposal for the purpose of determining opportunities for settlement area expansions and report back, and that a special meeting of council be scheduled to further discuss and review the report and to consider, review, and formulate strategies and responses regarding the City of Barrie boundary adjustment proposal and potential provincial facilitator and future development of Springwater Township, and that legal counsel with expertise in the area of municipal affairs and municipal government be retained to attend the special meeting to advise council, and that a committee of council be created with a mandate to further exploration of the 4 key items listed within the report, being 1, identify potential areas for increased residential and industrial development beyond current settlement area boundaries. 2, explore potential locations for special economic zones where collaboration with neighboring municipalities may be realized. 3, evaluate current municipal cross-border servicing agreements across Ontario. 4, consider collaboration with the County of Simcoe regarding a regional water and wastewater infrastructure model that would support further development of employment lands, and that the committee mandate include work with the successful consultant once awarded, and further that a terms of reference be brought forward for council's consideration based on the noted criteria.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through to the clerk. Is it a special meeting or a closed session meeting? One of the same, or are you asking for?
Clerk Ainsworth?
Sorry, with your motion.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Based on the criteria that legal counsel be retained for the special meeting, it would be conducted in closed session, just to protect that legal advice.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just if I can ask for one point of clarification, the Deputy Mayor, for that special meeting of council, are you seeking any additional information from staff, like an additional staff report to come to that meeting? Or do you have all the information that you're looking for? Just because that will determine when that next meeting can happen, if there's additional information that you're seeking. So sorry, as it was being read.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There were a couple of pieces that I probably likely would have alluded to at the meeting or prior to the meeting. One of the being the implications to the residents, tax implications to the residents if a boundary adjustment did take place. To those that are leaving us and taxes go up, and those that are staying behind whose taxes are most likely still going to go up as well. The other piece I would be interested in finding out is if we looked at the proposed mapping that the City of Barrie has advertised, let's say, and we look at that mapping and we look at those particular parcels, would be what would our anticipated taxation be in the areas that would be deemed employment lands or could be included as residential? Because the boundary adjustment as it's being proposed isn't in order to leave that property and leave those farms as is. It is being proposed specifically for the purposes of employment lands, and it then became residential units in order to assist with the provincial government's Build More Houses Faster program. So I think it would have been important to us not to know what taxation we might lose out on it now, but what taxation are we going to lose out on and development charges are we going to lose out on if all of those parcels were to be transferred to the city of Barrie? Because when I think about that, I don't think about 8 million bucks. I think about maybe $700 million.
And thank you for elaborating on that, Deputy Cabral, because when I asked the question earlier, the intent of my question was, we have an existing resolution on this table whereby we have directed staff not to examine boundary adjustments. So if this motion is now in contrary to that, I will have to refer to the clerk, because again, if the redirection is going to be down, just what you said is in my opinion, different than looking into those four things. So again, just trying to make sure that we are procedurally moving forward, and that when we are telling our public, no, we are not looking into boundary adjustments, and we advise staff that we're not doing that, if we're going to now do that, we need to make sure that we have proper resolutions at the table. Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The previous direction that was reconsidered at the March 6th meeting, the result of that was that discussions with the city of Barrie be terminated. The motion didn't have any indication in there about staff not being able to investigate further and if council is directing it, then that would be council direction. As far as I'm recalling the motion, CAO Schmidt.
CAO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Clerk Ainsworth. I believe you're correct, Clerk Ainsworth. I think it's somewhat, but the township can no longer have discussions directly with the city of Barrie regarding boundary adjustments. I don't think, to your point, if directed by council, if staff's directed by council, I think that could happen.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. And further to that, the amendment that was approved earlier, the first amendment to this main motion, had the wording that a special meeting of council be scheduled to further discuss and review the report and to consider, review, and formulate strategies and responses regarding the city of Barrie boundary adjustment proposal and potential provincial facilitator and future development of Springwater Township.
And as long as the corporation and our clerk are satisfied that we don't have contrary motions on the table, we can proceed. CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, would you be amenable to moving forward with that special meeting with the information that's already been provided, and possibly at that meeting, there could be further direction provided?
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you, I'm certainly amenable to that. This wasn't something that I was specifically going to address today. There are other items that could possibly come up at that meeting along these lines. But yes, I'm happy to do that at the subsequent meeting, because I think at the subsequent meeting, there may be further direction.
Thank you. Director Herron.
Thank you, Your Worship. And to assist the conversation, at the onset of that special meeting, planning would be available to provide somewhat of a scope of what the vision could entail. We can explain what complete community means and how that might affect our settlement boundary areas and help to shape both figuratively and accurately, the lay of the land under the planning regime that we currently live in and the potential planning regime that's coming along. And that may help council and even the committee, the advisory committee to be created, to understand what the potential is for growth, how we look at employment lands, how we look at investment in our own community. I'm being vague deliberately because I don't want to put ideas, but I think that planning can help to show how growth could occur, just sort of in a broad brush stroke at the onset of that meeting.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Thompson.
waters are getting a little muddied for me. I'm not sure what we're voting on here, so maybe the clerk, could she put the motion up so I can see it and read it and.
Clerk Ainsworth? I'll have Clerk Ainsworth read it for a final time.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The motion would read that the report from the Director of Planning and Development entitled Request for Information, Potential Future Options and Areas for Growth and Economic Viability within the Township of Springwater dated May 15, 24 be received, and that council directs staff to issue a request for proposal for the purpose of determining opportunities for settlement area expansions and report back, and that a special meeting of council be scheduled to further discuss and review the report and to consider, review, and formulate strategies and responses regarding the City of Barrie boundary adjustment proposal and potential provincial facilitator and future development of Springwater Township, and that legal counsel with expertise in the area of municipal affairs and municipal government be retained to attend the special meeting to advise council. And further, that a committee of council be created with a mandate to further explore the 4 key items listed within the report, being 1, identify potential areas for increased residential and industrial development beyond current settlement area boundaries. 2, explore potential locations for special economic zones where collaboration with neighboring municipalities may be realized. 3, evaluate current municipal cross-border servicing agreements across Ontario. 4, consider collaboration with the County of Simcoe regarding a regional water and wastewater infrastructure model that would support further development of employment lands. And further, that the committee mandate also include work with the successful consultant once awarded, and that the terms of reference be brought forward for council's consideration based on the noted criteria.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Counselor Thompson?
The follow-on question. So if I understand this correctly, that even though I'm in favor of having this special meeting to discuss the Barrie adjustment proposal, I also have to agree to the RFP and to the committee to move this business forward.
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. A motion to divide the question may be tabled at this time, should council wish to vote on this in parts.
Counselor Thompson?
I would wish to vote on the meeting separately, and the other 2 parts could be voted collectively.
And does that require a seconder for that? And I'm not seeing a seconder for that, so it'll remain as a whole. I'm good. All right, council, has there been a request for a recorded vote? There was. Thank you, and Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Once I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood,
Yes.
Councillor Alexander,
Yes.
Councillor Thompson,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Fisher,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral,
Yes.
and Mayor Coughlin.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. At this time, we will be taking a break and my clock is wrong. So what time do you want us back, Clerk Ainsworth? 10.
9:18.
9:18. Thank you.
Look. And he's got a box of cigars down. Yeah.
And we are reconvening. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the information reports, please? I have Councilors Alexander and Garwood that the reports listed herein be received as information. One, our bylaw service monthly activity report of April 2024. Two, our building service monthly activity report of April 2024. Three, our corporate credit card report of March 2024. Four, April 2024 check register. 5, 2024 AMO ministerial delegations. 6, fire department incident report. 7, fire department activity report, and 8, Q1 2024 procurement summary. And at this time, council, I would ask if there are any to be pulled for redirection. Following that, we can have items for comment. So are there any to be pulled for direction or redirection? And any items for comment? And not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. At this time, we'll move on to our verbal reports, and I will now call on Director Herron.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a long list of updates. We are in the construction season, so I'm going to read them off. Both for first Neighborhood 1, the Carson Road, Midhurst Valley area, and then following Neighborhood 2, Gill Road, Midhurst Heights. There are 3 items for Neighborhood 1. On the Thompson lands, topsoil stripping and earthworks have resumed and materials being delivered to the utility campus. 2, commissioning of the interim wastewater plant is ongoing. The schedule has the first effluent leaving the plant in late May. Tender has closed for the ultimate wastewater plant, and Midhurst Landowners Group plan on awarding it in May this month. 3, the expansion of the water treatment plant continues, with the additional reservoir and upgrades to facilitate occupancy for all development north of Carson Road. The design for improvements to Carson Road are underway. For neighborhood number 2, there are 5 items. The first one, construction of the water treatment plant and sewage pump station continue. Commissioning is anticipated in mid to late 2025. Number 2, this is a bit of a long one. Contractor continues with directional drilling of the sanitary force main. Work has progressed to Doran Road along Finley Mill Road in Midhurst. This section of work is anticipated to be completed by mid-June. The contractor anticipates the intersection of Wattie Road and Finley Mill will be reopened by mid-June. The contractor then anticipates moving out to Finley Mill and Snow Valley Road. The sanitary force main is scheduled to be completed by spring of 2025. A one-day road closure is being requested for next Friday to place a concrete valve chamber just south of Finley Mill and Belmont Crescent intersection. A detour route and flag person are being proposed to allow for the structure to be placed. This route will be for 1 block and include from Wattie to St. Vincent and back to Finley Mill along Belmont Crescent. Item number 3 of 5. Full road reconstruction is expected on Gill Road to start in June. This road reconstruction includes Gill Road, Doran Road, and Finley Mill Road to Wattie Road. Item 4, utility servicing to service the Doran Road development is now underway. This includes hydro pole relocations along Gill Road, installation of gas and telecommunication lines. The new development will have fiber optic communication service. And finally, item number 5, the developer is requesting a stage 1 site alteration and earthworks agreement for phase 1C and 1D early in June for council consideration.
Thank you. And thank you for that. And just on that, the road closure that's being proposed, I'm assuming that there'll be communication via social media to go out that we can share with our residents early next week.
Yep, I will speak with the project manager about that and make sure that it gets coordinated.
Thank you. Councilor, are there any questions on our development update? Not seeing any. At this time, we will move past our county update to municipal updates, and I will look for members of the council. Councilor Fisher.
Just a quick update. We Sure that a few other members of council may speak to this as well, but we had our bollards installed in a few areas in Midhurst. I've actually personally pulled over and watched to see if they were successful, as I'm sure some other members of council did. Happy to report, I think they're very successful. I've seen on St. Vincent a lot of people slowing down, the brake lights going on. So happy to have them, and I wait to see, you know, over time how the public adjusts to them, how they accept them, and you know, if this is ultimately if it's successful. So I see it as it's in a bit of a pilot project stage, but you know, so I thank staff for getting them up this week.
Councillor Thompson?
I am pleased to announce I was able to represent council at Battle of the Books today at Wyville Public School, and was thrilled to be able to hang the second place or the runner-up medals around the menacing Central Mustangs necks. And I would like to congratulate them all. And if they're watching tonight, and I hope they are, would encourage them to keep reading.
Councillor Alexander, and then Councillor Garwood. Your microphone, thank you.
Sorry, long night. I want to speak to the Township of Springwater working with the Severn Sound Environmental Association to develop the local climate change action plan. And they will be seeking public input on 2 upcoming public information sessions. They're informal drop-in for members of the public to learn more and provide any input. The first one will be at the Elmville Community Hall on May 30th, 5:30 to 8 p.m. And then the second one will be at the Admin Center, July 11th, 5:30 to 8. So I'm hoping the public come out, learn a bit more about the great work that both the township and the SSEA has partnered together to develop these plans.
Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Last Wednesday was McHappy Day across many communities across our country. I know many members of council were spread out at various McDonald's. Now we have 2 in Springwater, which is great. I was at the Elmville McDonald's with Mayor Coughlin on McHappy Day, and the energy in there was pretty amazing. I definitely am not cut out to work at McDonald's. I think I stood there for most of the time and I was in the way, but I had a great time, and I wanted to thank the folks at the Elmville McDonald's and for all that they're doing to raise funds for Georgian Bay General Hospital Foundation, for the MRI machine there, and Ronald McDonald House Charities. Adding on to what Councillor Fisher noted around the road bollards, last week, the 3 bollards in Elmville on Kerr Street, Simcoe Street, and Robinson Road, all in school zones, were installed. Fantastic to see. I've had many members of the community already mention them. I myself sat there and watched as well as folks drove by, and was pretty excited to see those get installed. So thank you to staff for making that a priority this spring. And as always, I'll wrap up with speaking about the farmers market. In 4 weeks, the farmers market will have our first market of the 2024 season. So we're continuing to put a call out for any vendors or businesses that are interested in participating. The BIA is excited about the activity this year with the market and the business that it'll bring to the community. So 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock, June 13th through August 29th, Thursday evenings in the parking lot of the community hall.
Thank you for that. This afternoon, I was able to attend at our Elmville Arena. We had the Skills Trade Expo, which is a partnership between the County of Simcoe School Boards and the OEAP program. They were able to maneuver over 2,000 students through that today. So congratulations to all involved in coordinating that. But it was high energy. The kids were really excited. I timed it to be there with my daughter's classroom, and we did a couple challenges. But it was a really good experience, and I really hope that wanted to thank our local businesses. We had many Springwater businesses there to support. So hopefully we spark some interest and we have some new careers from our skills trade. Is there anything further on municipal updates? At this time, we can move on to our notice of motion, which has been given. And have Councillor Alexander's notice of motion and a seconder for that, please. I have Councillor Garwood, and I will turn to Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So, sorry. Whereas Council for the Township of Springwater recognizes the importance of maintaining professionalism, decorum, and respecting whomever is speaking, whether it be a presenter, staff, or other members of council during all council meetings. And whereas members of council could be influenced by outside third parties during council discussion through cell phone communications, be it therefore resolved that the council hereby bans cell phones and any other type of device that receives outside communications aside from council assigned laptops for all members of council at the council table during all special, regular, and closed session meetings. And further, that an amendment to the procedure bylaw outlining rules regarding cell phone use for members of council during meetings be presented for consideration at the next regular meeting of council.
That. And I can turn back to Councillor Alexander for any further comment.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think our job is to sit at this table and to listen to the information given to us, whether it be from staff, a presenter, or each other. I think cell phones can become a distraction, even if people don't mean them to be. It's there. You can look, you're not paying attention, and you're therefore not receiving the full information. And I do think there is the ability for residents to reach out and try and maybe potentially get their opinions heard one last time while we were up here having the discussion. We certainly always want to hear from residents and what they're feeling and their opinions on stuff. But while we're at the table debating issues, that to me is not the time. So that's pretty much where I sit with it.
I have Councillors Thompson and Garwood.
I'd like to thank Councillor Alexander for bringing this motion forward. I'll be supporting it. I'm all for anything that improves professionalism, decorum, and respect in these meetings, and I think this is a good step forward. Thank you.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I would also like to thank Councillor Alexander for bringing this forward. When I saw this on the agenda last week, I had reached out right away saying that she had my support. This is something that I also toyed around with earlier on in the term, not knowing if there would be an appetite for it. So I'm happy that it's being brought forward now. In preparation for tonight, I did look at some other municipalities as well, understanding that the city of Barrie does have a similar process or procedure in place. Theirs is more specific to closed session meetings, but I am in full support of this. I think that absolutely this is necessary. When we are sitting here, we should be focused on the work at hand. That is what we were elected to do. So you have my support.
Thank you. And I'll just turn to Clerk Ainsworth with the timeline that the consideration be presented at our next regular meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yes, it's a simple amendment to the procedure bylaw. I don't see any issue with having it presented at the next regular meeting. One thing that I would maybe have council consider, which is something I'd like to write in within these conditions, is a provision for any kind of emergency procedure. Somebody has a sick child at home, they need to keep their cell phone close, maybe just a bit of a process, advising the mayor ahead of time, seeking a bit of a leave for special circumstances to maybe have a cell phone nearby just in case, just to build in those kinds of procedures in the event it might happen.
But not Leaf games. Thank you.
It's a playoff.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just on that, I'm wondering if that might be accomplished by providing a number of, say, the clerk or someone on staff to notify the member. I'm just thinking that might be something else that could be incorporated there as well. And I'm also wondering what the process would be for our cell phones and say our watches. Is there going to be a box that we're going to put them in? I kind of think the box is a good idea, to be honest with you, more of a Faraday cage, if you ask me, that we could deposit them in and then get them out later on. I think if we can't have them, there's no point them being turned on or communicating. That's all.
My plan is to leave mine in the bag right there, and we each have individual mailboxes in our room there. If you want to, feel free to leave it in that, you can do so as well. And Clerk Ainsworth, if you wanted to speak to electronic devices, which would include our watches as well.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yes, as this motion is drafted, the only devices permitted would be the council appointed laptops.
Thank you for that. Councilor, is there anything further on this? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. Councilor, are there any other notices of motion to be brought forward tonight? I'm not seeing any items for future consideration. Not seeing any. We have a mover and seconder to approve the bylaws, please. I have Counselor Moore and Fisher, that bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 2024 appoint municipal law enforcement officers. 2024-038. Moving on to 2024-039, appoint the treasurer, director of finance. 2024-040, part lock control exemption for the Elmvale Village, Phase 1C. 5,038,387 ZB 2024-011, 1584 Floss Road West. 5,388 ZB 2023-016, 30 Spence Avenue. 389 LH 2024-002 Ant Mills, Estates of Ant Mills. Are there any questions on any of these bylaws? And not seeing any, may I have a move, all those in favor? That is carried. May I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw, please? I have Councillor Garwood and Deputy Cabral. That bylaw 2024-041 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on May 15th, 2024, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That has carried. And a motion to adjourn, please. I have Councillor Moore and Thompson that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 9:36 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on June 5th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you.